The rain hammers against the ambulance bay glass, a dull roar that drowns out the steady beep of the heart monitors. Inside Trauma Room 1, Alina's hands are steady, threading a suture needle with the precision of a machine. She doesn't flinch when the double doors crash open. 4 FBI agents storm in, soaking wet, shouting conflicting orders, dragging a handcuffed man who is foaming at the mouth. The lead agent shoves a resident doctor into a wall, flashing a badge and demanding total clearance. They treat Alina like a piece of furniture, just a middle-aged nurse in scrubs, someone to clean up the mess. But as the prisoner coughs a spray of black, oily blood onto the floor, the room freezes. The agents recoil in panic. Alina doesn't. She steps forward, checks her watch, and locks the door. The agents think they are the authority in the room. They are about to realize they are just tourists in her war zone. The rain did not tap against the glass of the St. Jude's emergency room. It slammed against it. It was a heavy, relentless October downpour that turned the ambulance bay into a slick mirror of red brake lights and blue sirens. Inside, the air smelled of wet wool, rubbing alcohol and dried blood. Alina checked her watch, 02:14 a.m. She stood behind the triage desk, her posture straight, her face unreadable. To the casual observer, she was just a woman in her late 40s, perhaps early 50s. She wore standard-issue navy blue scrubs that were slightly too large, hiding the definition of her shoulders. Her hair, streaked with gray, was pulled back into a severe, practical bun. Her badge hung from a retractable lanyard on her chest. It read simply, Alina V. Triage Nurse. The ER was at capacity. It was a chaotic ecosystem of pain and impatience. In Bay 4, a construction worker was groaning with a crushed hand. In the hallway, an elderly woman sat in a wheelchair, coughing a dry, rhythmic cough. In the trauma room, the monitors were screaming. "I can't get the line in." The voice belonged to Dr. Holloway. He was a second-year resident, young, intelligent, and currently drowning in panic. Alina didn't run, she never ran. Running caused accidents. Running signaled loss of control. She walked. Her stride was smooth, almost gliding, eating up the distance between the desk and Trauma Room 2 with a terrifying efficiency. She pushed through the curtain. Holloway was sweating. He was hunched over a patient, a motorcycle accident victim, unconscious, blood pressure dropping. The young doctor was fumbling with an IV catheter, his hands shaking just enough to miss the collapsing vein. "BP is 80/40, the monitoring nurse said, her voice rising in pitch. "He's crashing." I know, Holloway snapped. He stabbed the needle in again, missed. Blood bloomed under the skin, a dark hematoma spreading. Damn it. Alina stepped into the small space. She didn't speak immediately. She moved into Holloway's peripheral vision, her presence heavy and grounding. "Doctor," she said. Her voice was low, devoid of urgency. It was a voice that didn't ask for attention. It commanded it by simply existing. "Step back." "I have to get this access," Holloway argued, sweat dripping from his nose. "You are fishing," Alina said calmly. "Give me the needle." It wasn't a request. Holloway blinked, the adrenaline haze clearing for a split second. He looked at Alina. He saw what the hospital staff always saw, a veteran nurse who had been there longer than the furniture. He stepped back, exhaling a curse. Alina stepped in. She didn't look at the monitor. She didn't look at the panic on the other nurse's face. She looked at the patient's arm. She visualized the anatomy, the hidden roadmap of veins beneath the traumatized tissue. She didn't slap the arm to find a vein. She pressed her thumb gently against the antecubital fossa, feeling for the faint, thready pulse. Target acquired. In one fluid motion, she uncapped a fresh needle, anchored the skin with her left hand, and advanced the catheter. There was no hesitation. No tremor. Flash of red in the chamber. "You're in," the monitoring nurse breathed out. Elena secured the line, taped it down, and hung the saline bag. "Wide open," she ordered softly. "Get 2 units of O-negative prepped. He has internal bleeding. The fluid is just buying you time to get him to surgery." She turned to Holloway. The young doctor was staring at her hands. "Check his belly for distension," Elena told him, her voice returning to a flat, professional monotone. "And breathe, doctor. If you panic, he dies." She didn't wait for a thank you. She turned and walked out of the trauma room, stripping off her latex gloves and tossing them into the biohazard bin in a single, practiced arc. She returned to the triage desk. She picked up her lukewarm coffee. She took a sip. This was the normal world. This was the baseline. To the hospital administration, Elena was a reliable, if somewhat distant, employee. She picked up extra shifts. She never complained. She never socialized at the staff parties. She was a ghost in the machine, the invisible component that kept the engine running when the parts started to grind. They didn't know that 20 years ago, she hadn't been fixing people. She had been taking them apart. They didn't know that the efficiency she displayed wasn't from nursing school. It was from the distinct, high-pressure discipline of keeping a team alive in the mountains of Kandahar or the damp basements of Belgrade. She sat down and looked at the intake forms. A broken ankle, a fever, a panic attack. Routine safe. Then the radio on the desk crackled. It wasn't the hospital frequency. It was the police scanner that the security guard, Miller, no relation to the coming storm, kept running in the background. "On dispatch, we are 2 minutes out. ETA to St. Jude's is 120 seconds. We need the bay clear. Repeat, clear the bay. Asset is unstable." Elena's head tilted slightly. Standard police transport protocol for an injured suspect was to call the Triage Nurse line, not broadcast an open clearing order. And they used the word asset, not suspect, not perpetrator. "Oh, asset." That was federal language, intelligence language. She stood up, her senses shifting gears. The low hum of the refrigerator, the distant siren, the chatter of the patients. It all separated into distinct audio tracks in her mind. "Clear Bay 1, Elena said to the intake clerk. "Bay 1, the clerk looked up, confused. "We have a stroke patient coming in 10 minutes. "Move the stroke patient to Bay 2, Elena said. She walked to the double doors that led to the ambulance bay. "Something else is coming." She stood by the glass doors, watching the rain. 30 seconds later, the convoy arrived. It wasn't an ambulance. It was 2 black SUVs flanking a heavily armored transport van. They didn't slow down gently. They tore into the ambulance bay, tires screeching on the wet concrete, stopping with aggressive precision. Blue and red lights from the dashboard strobes cut through the gloom, painting the wet walls in violent flashes of color. The doors of the SUVs flew open before the vehicles had fully stopped. Men poured out, 4 of them. They wore dark windbreakers with yellow lettering on the back, FBI. They didn't move like police officers. Police officers walked with a swagger of authority. These men moved with the tight, coiled tension of soldiers in hostile territory. They scanned the roofline. They scanned the parking lot. They had hands hovering near their waistbands. Elena watched them through the glass. Her eyes narrowed. Too much force for a standard transfer. Too much fear in their body language. The back doors of the van swung open. A man was dragged out. He was the asset. He was handcuffed, his ankles shackled. He wore an orange jumpsuit that was stained dark around the collar. He was stumbling, his head lolling forward. Alina focused on him. Even from 20 yards away, through rain-streaked glass, she saw the signs. He wasn't injured. There was no limp. There was no visible blood on the jumpsuit that suggested a gunshot wound. But he was drowning. His chest was heaving in spasmodic, jerky rhythms. His skin, illuminated by the strobe lights, was a pale, sickly gray. The lead agent, a tall, broad-shouldered man with a buzz cut and eyes that looked like they hadn't slept in a week, shouted something at the driver. He grabbed the prisoner by the arm and hauled him toward the hospital doors. Alina stepped back as the automatic doors hissed open. The storm blew in with them. Wind, rain, and the smell of hot engine oil. "Move," the lead agent screamed. "I need a secure room now." The chaos in the waiting room stopped. Patients froze. The security guard, old Mr. Henderson, half rose from his chair, his hand going to his belt. "Federal agents," the lead agent flashed a badge in Henderson's face, not stopping. "Sit down." They barreled past the triage desk. Dr. Holloway ran out of the trauma room, wiping his hands. "Whoa, whoa, you can't just bring a weapon in here. This is a sterile." The lead agent didn't even slow down. He stiff-armed Holloway, shoving the doctor back against the wall with enough force to knock the breath out of him. "I said I need a room," the agent roared. "Secure, no windows now." Alina stepped into the center of the hallway. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't raise her hands. She simply occupied the space where the agent wanted to go. The group halted. The momentum of the charge broke against her stillness. The lead agent looked down at her. He was 6'2". She was 5'5". He was furious. She was bored. "Trauma room 1 is empty," Alina said. Her voice cut through the shouting. "It has locking doors. It is isolated from the main ventilation for burn victims." The agent stared at her, assessing her in a microsecond. To him, she was an obstacle, a middle-aged nurse. A civilian, nothing. "Open it," he barked. Alina turned and swiped her badge on the reader. The doors to Trauma 1 clicked open. The agents shoved past her, dragging the prisoner inside. The prisoner's feet dragged on the linoleum. As he passed Alina, he lifted his head. Time seemed to slow. Alina looked into his eyes. The pupils were blown wide, encompassing almost the entire iris. The whites of his eyes were not white. They were laced with a spiderweb of burst capillaries that were turning a dark, bruised purple. And he was vibrating, not shivering from cold. Vibrating. A rapid, muscular tremor that started in his core and radiated to his extremities. Alina felt a cold spike of recognition drive itself into the base of her spine. Neurodegenerative onset. She had seen that tremor before, not in a hospital, in a shipping container outside of Odessa 12 years ago. The agents threw the man onto the gurney. "Cuff him to the rails," the lead agent ordered. "Miller, watch the door. Nobody comes in unless I say so." Agent Miller, the second in command, turned to slam the door. Alina put her hand on the door frame. Miller looked at her. He was younger than the lead agent, more aggressive, with a nervous energy that made him dangerous. "Back off, nurse." "He needs medical assessment," Alina said. She didn't move her hand. "You dragged a critical patient into my ER. By law, he is my responsibility until he is stabilized." "He's a federal prisoner," Miller spat. "He's not a patient. He's a source of information, and you don't have the clearance to breathe the same air as him." "I don't need clearance to see he's going into shock," Alina said. "Look at his neck." Miller glanced back at the prisoner. "The veins," Alina said softly. "Look at the jugular distension, it's black." Miller squinted. The prisoner was thrashing against the handcuffs. The veins in his neck were indeed bulging, thick and dark, looking like black worms crawling under the skin. "He's a junkie," Miller dismissed it. "Withdrawal." "That is not withdrawal," Alina said. She took a step forward. "I need to take his vitals. If he seizes while strapped down, he will dislocate his shoulders or bite his tongue off. Then your source won't be able to talk to anyone." The logic landed. Miller hesitated. "Check him," Miller said, stepping aside but keeping his hand on his holster. "But you keep your mouth shut. You see nothing, you hear nothing. You fix him so he can talk and then you get out." Alina walked into the room. The atmosphere inside was suffocating. The lead agent, whose name tag read Keller, was leaning over the prisoner, shouting questions. "Where is the canister? Erratic, where is it?" The prisoner just gurgled. A thick pink froth was bubbling at the corners of his mouth. Alina moved to the bedside. She put on fresh gloves. She ignored Keller's shouting. She ignored the other two agents standing in the corners with assault rifles held across their chests. She placed her stethoscope on the prisoner's chest. The sound that came through the earpieces was a wet, chaotic grinding. It sounded like someone crinkling cellophane underwater. Pulmonary hemorrhage, rapid progression. She moved the stethoscope to his abdomen. Silence. The gut had shut down. She looked at his arm where the handcuffs were digging into the skin. The skin around the metal cuffs wasn't just bruised, it was slewing off. The friction was tearing the epidermis away like wet paper. Tissue necrosis. Alina's mind raced through the database of her past life. Symptoms: dilated pupils, black venous discoloration, violent tremors, rapid tissue degradation, pulmonary fluid. Diagnosis: not a drug overdose, not a heart attack. This was a weapon. This was a biological agent designed to degrade the host rapidly, causing maximum terror and confusion before death. She looked at Keller. "Agent," she said. Keller ignored her. "Tell me the location," he screamed at the dying man. "Agent," Alina said, sharper this time, a command voice. Keller whipped around, his face red. "Do not interrupt me." "He is not going to talk," Alina said. Her voice was steady, but her eyes were hard. "He is drowning in his own blood. His lungs are liquefying." "Fix him," Keller shouted. "Give him adrenaline. Give him whatever you people give." "Adrenaline will kill him instantly," Alina said. "His heart rate is over 180. He needs intubation. He needs sedation. And," she paused, calculating the risk, "he needs isolation." "We are in a secure room," Miller sneered from the door. "Not secure enough," Alina said. She looked at the air vent in the ceiling. It was a standard hospital HVAC intake. "If this is what I think it is, that vent is sucking his breath out and cycling it into the main hallway." Keller stepped closer to her, invading her personal space. He used his height to intimidate. It worked on everyone else. It didn't work on Alina. She didn't blink. "Listen to me, nurse," Keller hissed. "You don't think, you don't diagnose. You keep him alive for 10 more minutes. That is your only job. If you mention isolation or biothreat to anyone outside this room, I will have you arrested for obstruction of national security. Do you understand?" Alina looked at him. She saw the fear behind the aggression. He knew something was wrong, but he was too committed to the mission to stop. He was following orders that were already obsolete. "I understand," Alina said quietly. "You're in over your head." Keller's eyes widened in shock at the insubordination. Before he could respond, the prisoner let out a sound that wasn't human. It was a high-pitched, wet shriek. The prisoner's back arched off the gurney. The metal rails rattled violently. The handcuffs groaned. "Hold him down," Keller shouted. Miller and the other agents rushed forward to pin the man's limbs. Alina stepped back, not out of fear but out of tactical necessity. She needed distance. She watched as the prisoner convulsed. The movement wasn't random, it was rhythmic, a violent seizing of the nervous system. Then she saw it. A drop of fluid leaked from the prisoner's tear duct. It wasn't a clear tear. It was black. It rolled down his cheek, thick and oily. Alina's heart rate didn't spike, it dropped. A cold calm washed over her. The nurse persona evaporated, the operator woke up. She wasn't looking at a patient anymore. She was looking at ground zero. She looked at the door. It was closed but not locked. She looked at the agents. They were leaning over the body, their faces inches from the source of the infection. They were already dead. They just didn't know it yet. Alina took a slow breath, filtering the air through her nose, testing it. The metallic tang of blood was stronger now. She checked the pockets of her scrubs. She had her trauma shears. She had a pen light. She had a roll of medical tape. It wasn't enough. She needed to seal the wing. But first, she had to survive the next 60 seconds. Agent Keller didn't shout it this time. He said it with a quiet, vibrating intensity that was far more dangerous. He shoved Alina toward the door of trauma room 1. "I need to suction his airway," Alina said, resisting the shove with a shift of her weight that was too subtle for Keller to notice, but enough to keep her on her feet. "If he aspirates that fluid, he dies in 4 minutes." "We have a medic en route," Keller snapped. "You are compromised, you asked questions you shouldn't have asked. Get out." He slammed the door in her face. The latch clicked. Then the deadbolt slid home. Alina stood in the hallway. The sudden silence was jarring. The rain was still hammering the roof, but the screaming chaos inside the room was now muffled behind 2 inches of solid oak and lead lining. She didn't bang on the door, she didn't argue. She turned around. The ER was transforming. While she had been inside, the other 3 agents had established a perimeter. It was aggressive and crude. Agent Miller, the younger, wire-taught man who had threatened her earlier, was standing by the triage desk. He had commandeered the phone lines. "Nobody makes a call," Miller was announcing to the stunned waiting room. "Cell phones on the floor. Now, anyone touches a device, they go into custody." Dr. Holloway was standing by the nurse's station, looking pale. He was gripping a clipboard so hard his knuckles were white. "You can't do this," Holloway stammered. "These people are sick. They need to contact their families." Miller turned on him. "This is a national security blackout, doctor. These people can wait. Sit down and shut up." Alina walked over to the station. She moved with her head down, assuming the posture of a scolded subordinate. It was the best camouflage in the world. People never looked twice at a defeated, middle-aged woman. "Dr. Holloway," Alina said softly. Holloway jumped. "Alina, Jesus, what is going on in there? Who is that guy?" "Listen to me," Alina said. She picked up a chart, pretending to read it. She didn't look at Holloway. She looked past him through the reflection in the glass partition, watching Miller. "Do not engage them. Do not argue. They are scared and they are armed." "Scared," Holloway whispered. "They look like stormtroopers." "They are terrified," Alina corrected. "Look at Miller." His hand keeps tapping his holster. He's checking his exits every 6 seconds. They don't know what they've brought us. She moved past Holloway and went to the supply closet. She needed to think. She needed to process the data points she had collected in those 3 minutes inside the room. She closed the closet door, leaving it cracked just an inch. The smell of bleach and gauze was comforting. It was the smell of order. She closed her eyes. Recall. The image of the prisoner flashed in her mind. High definition, frozen. The pupils fixed and dilated. Unequal size. Left pupil 8 and right pupil 6. Anisocoria indicates intracranial pressure. The skin diaphoretic, pale gray. Tactile temperature estimated at 103 degrees. The veins, jugular distension, coloration, black. That was the key. Venous blood was dark red, almost purple, but it wasn't black. Black meant the hemoglobin was being destroyed. It meant the blood was turning into sludge. Hemolysis. And the tremor, that specific rhythmic shuddering of the muscles. It wasn't a seizure. It was a fasciculation. The nerves were firing randomly because the myelin sheath was being dissolved. Elena opened her eyes. She stared at a box of saline bags. She knew this pathology. She hadn't seen it in a textbook. She hadn't seen it in nursing school. She had seen it in 2011, Operation Silent Winter, the Serbian border. Her unit had breached a farmhouse that intelligence said was a heroin processing lab. It wasn't heroin. The men inside were dead before the breach charges even blew the doors. They were slumped over tables, bleeding black fluid from their eyes and ears. The air had tasted like copper and ozone. The chimera strain, a Soviet-era remnant, a hemorrhagic fever modified for rapid aerosol transmission. It had a kill rate of 90%. The incubation period was supposed to be 24 hours. But the man in trauma room 1 was already in the terminal stage. Elena checked her watch. They had been in the hospital for 12 minutes. If the prisoner had been symptomatic in the van. She stepped out of the closet. She had to confirm it. She needed one more visual marker. Miller was busy arguing with a security guard near the entrance. Elena slipped past the desk, moving toward the observation window of trauma room 1. The blinds were drawn, but the slats were bent in one corner, damage from a gurney collision months ago that maintenance hadn't fixed. She pressed her face near the glass. Inside, the scene was deteriorating. The prisoner was strapped down, 4-point restraints holding his limbs. He was arching his back, his spine bending like a bow. Keller was holding a phone to his ear, screaming at someone on the other end. I don't care about jurisdiction. We have the asset. He is. He is failing. I need the extraction team now. Elena focused on the prisoner's arm. The IV line she had placed, or tried to place, was ripped out. Blood was spraying. But it wasn't spraying in a jet. It was oozing, thick, dark. And on the man's chest, where the hospital gown had been torn open, Elena saw the pattern. It looked like a map, a web of dark, purple lines tracking the lymphatic system. It was spreading visibly, inch by inch, crawling up toward his neck. The marbleizing. That was it, the signature. The virus attacked the lymph nodes first, turning them into necrotic bombs. When they burst, they released the toxin into the bloodstream, turning the veins into black marble under the skin. Elena pulled back from the window. Her heart was beating a slow, heavy rhythm against her ribs. It wasn't just a sick prisoner. It was a biological bomb, and the fuse was already burning. She turned and found Agent Miller standing directly behind her. He was close, too close. He smelled of rain and stale tobacco. "I thought I told you to stay away from the door," Miller said. His hand was resting on the grip of his sidearm, not drawing it but reminding her it was there. Alina didn't flinch. She didn't apologize. She looked him in the eye. "He's been out of the country," Alina said. Miller blinked. The statement threw him off script. "What?" "The prisoner," Alina said. "He hasn't been in a federal holding cell. You just picked him up, probably from a private airfield or a boat." Miller's face hardened. "That is classified information. Who the hell are you?" "I'm the person looking at the rash on his chest," Alina said. She kept her voice low, pitching it below the noise of the waiting room so only Miller could hear. "He has a marbleized rash tracking his lymphatic system. He has black venous distension, and he smells like copper." Miller stepped closer, trying to use his height to tower over her. "You're imagining things, nurse. He's a junkie. He took a bad batch." "Did he?" Alina asked. "Is that what they told you?" She took a step closer to him, invading his space. It was a subtle dominance move. Miller, trained to intimidate, wasn't used to a middle-aged woman stepping into his radius. He rocked back on his heels slightly. "Where did he come from, Agent?" Alina pressed. "The Balkans, Ukraine, or was he coming from Syria?" Miller's eyes widened. "How do you know about?" He stopped himself. The slip was infinitesimal, but it was there. "I know because I know what he's dying of," Alina said. "It's not an overdose, it's a hemorrhagic pathogen, and it is airborne." Miller laughed. It was a nervous, bark-like sound. "Airborne? You've been watching too many movies. If it was airborne, we'd be sick." "The incubation period is usually 24 hours, Alina said. "But he is progressing too fast, which means the strain has been accelerated, or he was given a massive dose." She looked at Miller's collar. "You were in the van with him?" she said. "Yeah, so... For how long?" 2 hours. We drove him up from the port." Alina felt a cold weight settle in her stomach. 2 hours in a confined space, recirculated air. "Did he cough?" Alina asked. Miller hesitated. He looked at the door of Trauma 1. He looked back at Alina. The arrogance was starting to crack, revealing the uncertainty underneath. He was coughing a lot. That's why we brought him in. We thought he was choking." Alina nodded slowly. "Agent Miller, you need to listen to me very carefully. You and your team have been exposed. You are currently carriers." Miller's face flushed red. Anger was his defense mechanism. Fear turned to aggression. "That's enough," he snarled. "You're trying to scare us. You're trying to interfere with a federal operation. I should cuff you right now." "If you cuff me," Alina said calmly, "I can't help you when you start bleeding." Miller grabbed her arm. His grip was hard, bruising. "Sit down," he ordered, shoving her toward a plastic chair near the desk. "You sit there, you don't speak to anyone, you don't look at the door. If you open your mouth again, I will arrest you for obstruction of justice. Do you understand?" Alina looked at his hand on her arm. She calculated the mechanics of breaking his grip. A simple rotation of the wrist, a strike to the radial nerve. He would drop to his knees. But not yet. If she fought him now, the other agents would open fire. In a crowded ER, civilians would die. She had to wait. She had to let the situation escalate until they had no choice but to listen. "I understand," Alina said. She sat down. Miller glared at her for a moment longer, then turned and walked back to his post by the door. He pulled out his radio. Base, this is Miller. Status update on the medic. Yeah, the asset is. He's screaming again, hurry up. Elena watched him. She saw him wipe his forehead. He was sweating. It was cool in the ER. The AC was running. Symptom 1. She looked at the clock. 02:22 a.m. 8 minutes since arrival. Inside the trauma room, the screaming stopped abruptly. It was replaced by a wet, gurgling sound that was loud enough to be heard through the door. Then a crash, the sound of a metal instrument tray hitting the floor. Hold him, Keller's voice muffled through the wood. God, he's strong, he snapped The sentence ended in a shout of pain. The door to trauma room 1 shook. Something heavy had been thrown against it from the inside. Miller jumped. He put his hand on his gun. Boss, Miller shouted at the door. Status. There was no answer, just the sound of gagging. Elena sat perfectly still. She watched the gap under the door. She was waiting for the spill. She knew the physics of the human body. When the internal pressure got too high, when the lungs filled completely with fluid, the body tried to purge it. A dark, viscous liquid began to seep out from under the door of trauma room 1. It moved slowly across the linoleum, mixing with the muddy rainwater the agents had tracked in. It wasn't red, it was black. Miller looked down. He saw the liquid touching the toe of his boot. He stepped back, revulsion on his face. What the hell is that? Elena didn't stand up. She spoke clearly from her chair. That is his liver, she said, or what's left of it. Miller looked at her, his eyes wide. Open the door, Agent Miller, Elena said. Your boss is in trouble. I can't. Secure protocol. Protocol is dead, Elena said. Open the door. Miller hesitated. Then the door opened from the inside. It wasn't Keller who opened it. It was the prisoner. He had broken the leather restraints. He was standing in the doorway, swaying. His orange jumpsuit was soaked. His face was a mask of black fluid, eyes blind, blood weeping from the sockets. He looked directly at Miller. And then he coughed. It wasn't a normal cough. It was a violent, explosive projection of aerosolized fluid. A mist of pink and black spray hung in the air, drifting instantly toward the ventilation intake above the nurse's station. Miller froze. The spray hit him in the face. The waiting room went silent. Elena stood up. The warning signs were over. The threat had arrived. She didn't look at the patient. She looked at the ceiling, mapping the HVAC ducts in her mind. Main intake triggers in 10 seconds. She walked toward the nurse's station counter. There was a red button under the desk, a panic alarm for police. She didn't press that. She reached for the keyboard of the Triage Nurse's computer. Dr. Holloway, Elena said. Her voice was no longer the voice of a nurse. It was the voice of a commander on a battlefield. Get down. Holloway dropped to the floor without asking why. Elena's fingers flew across the keyboard. System override. Admin code, Omega-7 actual. It was a code that hadn't been used in this hospital since she buried her old life. A backdoor she had installed the week she was hired, just in case the past ever came knocking. The silence that followed the cough lasted exactly 3 seconds. It was enough time for the aerosolized mist to drift through the stagnant air of the hallway. It hung there, a fine pink haze catching the fluorescent light, suspended like a phantom over Agent Miller's stunned face. Miller stood frozen. His hand was halfway to his face, an instinctive, useless gesture to wipe away the black fluid that splattered his cheek and chin. Then gravity took over. The prisoner, his body finally spent, collapsed face forward onto the linoleum. He hit the floor with a wet, heavy slap that sounded like a side of beef being thrown onto a butcher's block. Chaos detonated. "Contact," one of the backup agents screamed. He was standing near the ambulance bay doors, an MP5 submachine gun raised. "Gun, he's got a gun," the other agent yelled, hallucinating a weapon in the empty, twitching hands of the dying man. Elena slammed her hand down on the counter, abandoning the keyboard for a split second. "Do not shoot," her voice cracked through the like a whip. "Hold your fire." She knew the ballistics. She knew the physics. A 9 hollow point hitting a pressurized, fluid-filled body at close range wouldn't just kill the target. It would atomize the blood. It would turn a local spill into a room-wide saturation event. But the agents weren't listening to a nurse. They were listening to their panic. The prisoner twitched one last time, his hand scrabbling against the floor. The agent by the door squeezed the trigger. Pop, pop, pop. 3 shots, deafening in the confined space of the tiled hallway. The round struck the prisoner in the back. The impact was visceral. The body jerked violently. And just as Elena had calculated, the exit wounds created a fine mist of blood and tissue that sprayed upward, coating the bottom of the nurse's station counter and splattering against the legs of Agent Miller. "Cease fire," Miller screamed, finally finding his voice. He stumbled back, slipping on the slick mixture of rain and blood. "He's down, he's down." The echo of the gunshots rang in the air, leaving a high-pitched whine in everyone's ears. Dr. Holloway was on the floor, hands over his head, hyperventilating. The intake clerk was screaming, a high, thin sound of pure terror. Elena didn't scream, she didn't duck. She watched the blood mist. She watched it drift upward, caught by the invisible current of the air conditioning. She watched it swirl toward the intake vent directly above the main desk. Contamination imminent. If that mist entered the HVAC system, it would travel to the pediatric wing on the 2nd floor within 4 minutes. Elena moved. She vaulted over the nurse's station counter. It was a movement of shocking athleticism for a woman who usually complained about her lower back to fit in with the other nurses. She landed softly on the other side, directly in the path of the airflow. She grabbed a stack of patient files, heavy, plastic-coated charts, and slammed them against the intake vent, holding them there with the pressure of her palm. It was a crude seal, but it stopped the immediate suction. "Turn it off," she yelled at Holloway, who was cowering under the desk. "Holloway, the breaker panel, kill the AC." Holloway looked up, eyes wide and unseeing. "They shot him." "Dr. Holloway?" Elena didn't use her nurse voice. She used the voice she had used to command a fire team in Fallujah. "Move your ass and kill the breaker." The sheer force of the command shocked the young doctor into action. He scrambled on hands and knees toward the electrical panel on the back wall, fumbling with the latch. Suddenly, the door to Trauma Room 1 creaked open further. Agent Keller appeared. The lead agent looked like a man who had walked out of a burning building. His suit was torn. His face was a mask of shock. He was clutching his own throat. "Miller," Keller wheezed. "Containment." Keller took a step and fell to his knees. He vomited, a violent black expulsion that coated the floor. The other agents leveled their weapons at their own boss. "Stay back," the agent by the door shouted, his voice trembling. "Sir, stay back." Miller was backing away, wiping his face frantically with his sleeve, smearing the blood into his pores. "Boss, what is that? What the hell is that?" Elena looked at Miller. "Don't touch your face," she said, her voice dropping to a terrifying calm. "It's too late, but don't scrub it in." Miller spun around to face her, his eyes wild. He raised his gun, pointing it directly at Elena's chest. "You," he screamed. "You did this, you let him out." The barrel of the Glock 19 was steady, even if Miller's hand wasn't. Elena stood her ground. She was holding the files against the vent with her left hand. Her right hand hung loose at her side. "I told you to secure him," Elena said. "I told you he was a biological hazard. You ignored the intel." "Shut up," Miller roared. "Get on the ground, everybody on the ground." He was losing it. The psychological break was happening. He had been exposed, his boss was dying in a pool of black slime, and he had no protocol for this. He was reverting to aggression to regain control. "Agent Miller," Elena said, speaking slowly, "look at your boss." Miller's eyes flicked to Keller. Keller was on his side now, convulsing, the same tremor the prisoner had, the same rapid degradation. It had happened in less than 15 minutes. "That is a weaponized strain of Marburg variant," Elena said. "Or something worse. It eats the clotting factors in your blood. You have been exposed, direct contact with mucous membranes." "I said shut up." Miller cocked the hammer. "If you shoot me," Elena said, "you die. Everyone in this room dies, because I am the only person here who knows how to set up a negative pressure quarantine." Miller hesitated. The logic pierced through his panic. "I can save you," Elena lied. She couldn't save him. He was a dead man walking, but she could save the hospital. "But you have to put the gun down." Miller's breathing was ragged. "You're just a nurse. And you're just a corpse with a badge unless you listen to me," she countered. A heavy clunk sounded from the wall. The hum of the air conditioning died. Holloway had pulled the breaker. The sudden silence was heavy, broken only by the sound of rain and Keller's wet, gasping breaths. Elena slowly lowered the files from the vent. The air was still. "Holloway," Elena said without looking away from Miller's gun. "Get the biohazard kit from the supply closet, the level 4 kit, the one we laughed about never needing." Holloway stammered. "Go," she commanded. Holloway ran. Elena looked at Miller. "I'm going to walk to the computer," she said. "I need to lock the external doors so no more innocent people walk into this death trap. Do not shoot me." "No," Miller said, shaking his head. "No lockdowns, we extract. I'm calling the team. We're leaving." "You leave and you take this into the city," Elena said. "You get in a car, you touch the handle, you cough on the driver. Within 6 hours, Chicago has 3,000 cases. Within a week, the eastern seaboard is a graveyard." "That's not my problem," Miller yelled. "I have orders to bring the asset in." "The asset is dead," Elena pointed to the body on the floor. "The virus is the asset now, and you are the carrier." Miller stared at her. He looked at the blood on his hands. He looked at the dead prisoner. The reality was crushing him. I have to call it in," Miller whispered. He reached for his radio. "Don't," Elena warned. "Base, this is Miller. We have a situation, red. Officer down, requesting immediate extraction and hazmat support. Get us out of here." The radio crackled back. "Copy, Miller. ETA 4 minutes. SWAT is inbound to secure the perimeter. We are coming in hot." Elena closed her eyes for a brief second. "SWAT?" They would breach the doors. They would storm the hallway. They would break the seal. The virus would escape. She opened her eyes. The gray irises were hard like flint. She had tried to warn them. She had tried to reason with them. She had tried to save them from themselves. Now she had to stop them. "You just killed us all," Elena said softly. She turned her back on Miller. "Hey," Miller shouted, "don't you turn your back on me." Elena walked to the central station. She didn't hurry. She walked with the heavy, deliberate gait of someone walking toward an executioner's chair. She reached the main control console. The screen was still blinking with the prompt she had summoned earlier. "System override, awaiting confirmation." Miller ran toward her, grabbing her shoulder and spinning her around. He shoved the gun barrel under her chin. "I said stop," Miller screamed. Spittle flew from his mouth. Elena looked at the spittle landing on her scrub top. Infection vector. She looked up into Miller's eyes. She saw the dilation starting. The pupils were already reacting. "You're already sick, Agent," she said. She brought her hand up. Miller flinched, expecting a strike. He tensed his finger on the trigger. But Elena didn't strike him. She moved her hand past the gun, past his face, and reached out to the red button on the wall, the fire door magnetic release. But she didn't hit the release. She hit the keypad next to it. Her fingers moved so fast they were a blur. 7734. Miller stared at her, confused. "What are you doing?" "Saving the world," Elena said. She hit enter. Ka-chunk. The sound was massive. It came from the ceiling, from the walls, from the floor. Heavy steel shutters, designed for riot control and fire containment, slammed down over the main entrance glass doors. Another set of shutters crashed down over the ambulance bay entrance. The hallway doors leading to the rest of the hospital slammed shut, the magnetic locks engaging with a thud that shook the floor. "What did you do?" Miller backed away, looking around wildly. "Open it, open the doors." "I can't," Elena said. "That was a hard seal. It overrides the fire code. It overrides the security badges. It overrides your authority." The radio on Miller's belt screamed. "Miller, we are locked out. The shutters just came down. We can't breach. Open the bay." Miller grabbed Elena by the collar of her scrubs. "Open it back up, or I swear to God I will blow your head off." Elena looked at the gun. Then she looked at the security camera in the corner of the room. She grabbed the microphone of the hospital PA system. She pressed the button. Her voice boomed through the speakers, echoing in the sealed wing, in the cafeteria, in the parking lot where the SWAT team was gathering. "This is St. Jude's Trauma Wing," Elena said. Her voice was steady, magnified, godlike. "We are under code black. Biological containment level 5 is in effect. No one enters, no one leaves." She looked at Miller. "If you breach these doors," she said into the mic, addressing the SWAT team outside, "you are responsible for a catastrophic biological event. Stand down." She dropped the mic. The feedback squealed. Miller was trembling. He looked at the steel shutters. He looked at the dead body. He looked at Elena. "You locked us in," he whispered. "You locked us in with it." "Yes," Elena said. She reached up and gently pushed the gun barrel away from her chin. Miller was too in shock to resist. "Now," Elena said, rolling up her sleeves. "Sit down, Agent. We have work to do." The echo of the steel shutters slamming down vibrated in the floorboards for a long time. It was a sound of finality, like a coffin lid closing. The emergency room, usually a place of transient chaos, people coming in, people going out, was now a tomb. The red exit signs hummed in the semi-darkness. The main overhead lights had flickered and died when the high-voltage shutters drew power, leaving the wing bathed in the sickly yellow glow of the emergency backup generator. Agent Miller stood by the wall, his chest heaving. His gun was still in his hand, hanging limply by his thigh. He looked at the sealed entrance, then at the dead prisoner, then at Alina. "You trapped us," Miller whispered. His voice was thin, stripped of all authority. "You actually trapped us." "I secured the perimeter," Alina corrected. She walked past him, ignoring the weapon. She moved to the center of the room, her eyes scanning the layout. "Dr. Holloway, stand up." Holloway was still crouched behind the counter, shaking. "Doctor," Alina said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it had a density to it that cut through the panic. "Stand up, check your hands. Do you have any open cuts? Hangnails, scratches?" Holloway stood up slowly, looking at his palms. No, I don't think so." "Good, put on a double layer of nitrile gloves. Tape the wrists to your sleeves. Do it now." Alina turned to the two other FBI agents. They were young, fit men in their late 20s, holding MP5 submachine guns that were utterly useless against a microbe. They were backing away from the pool of black fluid where their boss, Agent Keller, lay twitching in his final throes. "You two," Alina pointed. "What are your names?" The agents looked at each other, then at Miller. Miller didn't answer. He was staring at his own reflection in the darkened glass of the nurse's station. "Names," Alina barked. The sound was sharp, percussive. "Davis," the taller one stammered. "Agent Davis." "Rogers," the other said. "Davis, Rogers," Alina nodded. "Drop the long guns. They are heavy and they are contamination surfaces. Put them on the counter. Keep your sidearms if it makes you feel safe, but do not touch them unless I tell you." "We don't take orders from a nurse," Davis said, though his voice wavered. He looked to Miller for support. "Miller, she can't tell us to disarm." Miller turned slowly. His face was pale, sweat beading on his upper lip. He looked at Alina. He saw the way she stood, feet shoulder-width apart, hands loose, eyes tracking multiple vectors at once. He realized with a dawning horror that she wasn't panicking. She was working. "Do what she says," Miller croaked. "But..." "Do it," Miller screamed, his voice cracking. "She knows what this is. Look at her, she knows." Davis and Rogers hesitantly placed the submachine guns on the counter. The metal clattered loudly in the silence. Alina didn't say thank you. She stepped into the center of the grouping. "Listen to me," she said. "We have created a hard seal. That means the air inside this wing is finite. The negative pressure system is currently off because Holloway pulled the breaker. That was necessary to stop the spread, but it means we are now in a stagnant box with an aerosolized hemorrhagic agent." She pointed to the intake vent she had blocked with the files. "The virus is heavy," she explained. "It settles. That's why the floor is the most dangerous place right now. Stay on your feet. Do not sit down. Do not touch the walls." She walked over to the supply cart. She began ripping open packages of surgical gowns. "What is it?" Miller asked. He had holstered his gun and was wiping his hands on his pants, a compulsive, nervous tic. "You said you knew what it was." "I said I knew the symptoms," Alina lied smoothly. She couldn't tell them she recognized the chimera strain from a classified kill list. "It presents like a modified Marburg variant, highly contagious. Incubation is accelerated." She tossed a gown to Miller. He caught it reflexively. "Put it on," she ordered. "Backwards, tie it tight, then put another one on frontwards. We need layers." "Is that going to stop it?" Rogers asked, his voice trembling. "A paper gown." Alina stopped. She looked at Rogers. He was terrified. He was just a kid in a windbreaker who thought he was cool an hour ago. "No," Elena said honestly. "It won't stop it, but it will keep the droplets off your skin. And right now, distance and barriers are the only god you have." She turned to Holloway. "Doctor, I need bleach. I need alcohol. I need every bottle of betadine we have in stock. We are making a decontamination airlock." "Where?" Holloway asked. "The vestibule between the ER and the waiting room." Elena pointed to the double doors she had locked down earlier. "That is the clean zone. The rest of this room is the hot zone. We do not cross that line without a chemical scrub." "And the prisoner," Davis pointed at the corpse, "and Agent Keller." Elena looked at the bodies. Keller had stopped moving. The pool of black fluid around him had stopped spreading. "They are the source," Elena said. "We need to move them." "Move them?" Miller stepped back. "I'm not touching them." "If we leave them there," Elena said, "the virus continues to replicate in the necrotic tissue. As the body cools, gases release. More aerosol. We need to seal them in body bags, double-bagged, duct-taped." As she looked at the three agents, "You brought him here," she said cold. "You carry him." "No way," Miller shook his head. "No way in hell." Elena walked up to Miller. She was 6 inches shorter than him, but in that moment she towered over him. "Agent Miller," she said, "let me explain the math to you. If we reduce the viral load in this room, our chances of survival go up to maybe 40%. If we leave those bodies venting toxin into the air we are breathing, our chances are 0. You are already symptomatic. You are sweating. Your pupils are sluggish. You are fighting for your life right now. Do you want to fight, or do you want to curl up and die?" Miller stared at her. He saw the absolute granite hardness in her eyes. It was the look of someone who had weighed life and death on a scale 1,000 times and never flinched. He swallowed hard. "Where are the bags?" he whispered. 10 minutes later, the ER was a flurry of terrified but directed activity. Elena had transformed the space. She had directed Holloway to tape plastic sheeting over the vents and the gaps in the doors. She had mixed a solution of bleach and saline in spray bottles, creating a crude decontamination mist. Miller, Davis, and Rogers, wearing double gowns, masks, and face shields, were struggling with the body of the prisoner. "A lift on 3, Miller grunted. 1, 2, 3. They heaved the wet, heavy corpse into the thick, black disaster pouch. The smell was atrociously metallic, like a bucket of old pennies and rotten meat. Elena stood 10 feet away, holding a spray bottle. As they zipped the bag, she doused the exterior with bleach. "Tape the zipper," she commanded. 3 layers. They did it. Their hands were shaking, but they were working. "Now Keller," Elena said. The agents hesitated. This was their boss, a man they had beers with, a man who had briefed them that morning. Now he was a twisted heap of contaminated meat. "Do it," Elena said softly. "Respect him by protecting his team." They bagged Keller. Rogers was crying inside his mask, his shoulders shaking, but he lifted the legs. They moved the bodies into trauma room 2 and sealed the door with duct tape. "Mark the door," Elena said to Holloway. "Biohazard, do not open." Holloway wrote it in red marker on a piece of tape. His handwriting was jagged. Elena checked the room. The immediate source was contained, but the air was still dangerous. She walked to the nurse's station and picked up the phone. It was dead. The lockdown had cut the landlines. "Cell phones," she said. "Does anyone have a signal?" Miller pulled his phone from his pocket. "No bars, the shutters. They're essentially a Faraday cage. Nothing gets out." A radio. Short range only, Miller said. I can talk to the SWAT team just outside the door, but I can't reach Quantico. Good, Elena said. Good, Miller looked at her like she was insane. Why is that good? Because if you talk to Quantico, Elena said, they will tell you to wait. They will tell you to sit tight while they hold meetings. And while they hold meetings, we will die. We need to solve this from the inside. She walked to the medicine cabinet. She unlocked the narcotics safe. She didn't take morphine. She took a box of benzodiazepines. Here, she handed a pill to each of the agents and Holloway. What is this? Davis asked. Ativan, Elena said. It will lower your heart rate. Panic makes you breathe faster. Breathing faster means you inhale more viral particles. Calm down and you live longer. They took the pills. They were desperate for any form of control, any chemical assistance. Suddenly, a loud banging echoed from the metal shutters covering the main entrance. Clang, clang, clang. Miller, a voice shouted from outside, muffled by the steel. Miller, report, we have a thermal drill. We are cutting the door. Miller looked at the shutters. Hope flared in his eyes. No, Elena said. She ran to the shutters. She slammed her hand against the metal. Do not breach, she screamed. Stop. Who is that? The voice outside demanded. We are cutting in 30 seconds. Elena turned to Miller. Tell them to stop. If they cut that door, the pressure differential will suck this air right into their faces. They will be infected before they get through the hole. Miller held his radio. He looked at the door, then at Elena. They're coming to save us, Miller said weakly. They are coming to kill us, Elena said. They just don't know it yet. A thermal drill will vaporize the virus. It will create a plume. You have to stop them. Miller's hand shook. He pressed the transmit button. Command, this is Miller, he said. His voice was steadier now. The Ativan or the adrenaline or maybe just Elena's influence was working. Abort breach. Repeat, abort breach. Miller, we have eyes on the thermal. We can get you out. Negative, Miller shouted. We have a confirmed level 5 bioevent. The atmosphere is toxic. If you breach, you kill the perimeter team. Do not open this door. There was a long silence on the radio. Copy, Miller, holding position. What is your status? Miller looked at Elena. He didn't know what to say. Elena signaled him to give her the radio. He handed it to her. Elena pressed the button. She didn't use police codes. She spoke in plain, brutal English. This is Triage Nurse Elena, she said. We have 5 souls inside, 2 confirmed fatalities. We are sealing the internal vents. We need you to kill the main hospital air intake on the roof. If you don't, this goes into the maternity ward. Who is this? The voice cracked back. Put Miller back on. Do it, Elena commanded. Kill the HVAC now. She released the button and clipped the radio to her scrub pants. They won't listen to a nurse, Miller said. They will if they're scared enough, Elena said. She turned to the group. We have bought ourselves time. Maybe 2 hours before the oxygen levels in here get uncomfortable. Maybe 4 hours before the virus burns through the rest of us. She looked at Holloway. Doctor, set up IVs. Everyone gets a liter of saline. We need to dilute the blood, keep the viscosity down. She looked at Davis and Rogers. You too. Guard the shutters. If they try to drill again, you bang on the door, you make noise, you keep them out. And you, Miller asked. He was watching her with a strange expression now, a mix of suspicion and awe. What are you going to do? Elena looked at the ceiling. She was looking at the vent where the mist had disappeared. I'm going to find out why the negative pressure alarm is blinking, she said. She pointed to a small lead panel on the wall near the ceiling. It was flashing red. Fault, pressure equalization failing. If that fails, Alina said quietly, the seal breaks. The air inside here pushes out into the hallway seams, and then everyone in the waiting room dies. She walked toward the maintenance ladder that led to the ceiling crawl space. Wait, Miller said. He stepped in front of her. Alina stopped. Miller looked at her eyes. He was searching for something. You're not just a triage nurse, he said. It wasn't a question. I've seen nurses work. My sister is a nurse. They don't know how to bag a body like that. They don't know tactical geometry. Alina adjusted her gloves. I watch a lot of news, agent. Bullshit, Miller whispered. You called it a hard seal. You knew the kill rate. You knew the drill would vaporize the agent. He leaned in closer. Who are you? Alina paused. She looked at the young agent. He was dying. She could see the capillaries in his eyes starting to burst, turning the whites pink. He deserved the truth, or at least a fragment of it. I'm the one who cleans up the mess, she said. She pushed past him and climbed the ladder. Keep the IVs running, Miller, she called down. And don't die on me yet. She pushed the ceiling tile aside and pulled herself up into the darkness of the crawl space. As she disappeared, the room below felt instantly colder, as if the only source of heat and certainty had just vanished. Miller stood there staring at the empty hole in the ceiling. He touched his radio. He touched his gun. Then he turned to Holloway. You heard her, Miller said, his voice echoing Alina's cadence. Get the lines, let's hook up. The command had been transferred. The hierarchy had been rewritten. The nurse was the general, and the FBI were the foot soldiers. And in the darkness above them, Alina crawled through the dust, listening to the hum of the dying vent. The space above the suspended ceiling was a different world. Down below, the ER was a place of white tiles, stainless steel, and the sharp, chemical smell of bleach. Up here in the crawl space, it was a suffocating throat of darkness, dust, and the low-frequency hum of high-voltage conduits. Alina moved on her elbows and knees. The space was tight, barely 2 feet of clearance between the drop ceiling tiles and the heavy galvanized steel of the HVAC ducts. She didn't use a flashlight. A beam of light cutting through the vents might panic the agents below, casting erratic shadows like a monster in a horror movie. Instead, she used the ambient light filtering up through the cracks in the tiles, a grid of faint, yellow lines that offered just enough visibility to navigate the maze of wires and pipes. She controlled her breathing. In for 4, hold for 4, out for 4. The air up here was warmer, stagnant. She reached the junction box for the negative pressure system. It was a gray metal unit the size of a microwave, bolted to the main duct. A small red LED was blinking on its side. Alina pulled a multi-tool from her scrub pocket. She had swiped it from the maintenance cart on her way to the ladder. She unscrewed the faceplate. Inside, the damper actuator was vibrating. It was trying to close, but something was blocking the torque arm. Alina reached in. Her fingers brushed against something soft, something organic. As she froze, she pulled her hand back and brought the pen light up, shielding the beam with her palm so it wouldn't shine down. A rat dead. It had crawled into the intake, gotten caught in the damper blades, and died. The actuator was jamming against the carcass, unable to seal the airflow. Alina stared at the dead rodent. It wasn't decomposed, it was fresh, but it was bleeding from the eyes. The vector isn't just human. If rats were infected, the virus had been in the building's infrastructure longer than 20 minutes. Or more likely, the prisoner had been shedding the virus in the van, and the intake at the loading dock had pulled it in, infecting the vermin in the walls. Elena felt a cold sweat prickle her hairline. She wasn't just fixing a fan, she was inside the infection web. She used the pliers on her multi-tool to grab the rat's tail. She yanked. It came free with a wet, tearing sound. She shoved the carcass into a corner away from the airflow. She manually forced the damper arm down. It groaned, metal on metal, then slammed shut. The vibration stopped. The hum deepened. Below her, the negative pressure would be stabilizing. The air was no longer leaking out. It was trapped in. That was the good news. The bad news was that they were now hermetically sealed in a box where the viral concentration would double every 10 minutes. Elena lay there for a moment in the dust. She closed her eyes. She could hear the voices below through the thin acoustic tiles. "Oh, my hands are shaking. Is that a symptom?" That was Rogers. "Shut up, Rogers. It's adrenaline." Miller. Elena listened to the timbre of Miller's voice. It was rougher, wet. The congestion was setting in. She had to go back down. She had to manage the decline. When Elena dropped back down from the ladder, landing softly in the supply closet, the atmosphere in the ER had shifted from panic to a heavy, morbid dread. The agents and Dr. Holloway were sitting on the floor, against her orders, huddled near the nurse's station. They looked like shipwreck survivors on a raft. Miller stood up as she entered. He looked bad. His skin was gray, shining with a layer of sweat that wasn't evaporating. He was holding a tissue to his nose. It was spotted with bright red blood. "Did you fix it?" Miller asked. His voice was thick. "The seal is holding," Elena said. She walked over to the sink and washed her hands, scrubbing violently with the orange surgical soap. "But we have a problem." "Another one?" Holloway moaned. He was rocking back and forth, clutching his knees. Elena dried her hands and turned to face them. "The filters are saturated," she said. It was a half-truth, but it was the necessary narrative. "The viral load in the air is increasing. We are in a kill box." "Eh, what?" Davis asked. "Military term," Elena said. "A zone where the enemy concentrates fire to ensure 100% casualty rates. In our case, the enemy is the air." She looked at Miller. "How do you feel?" "Like I have the flu," Miller said. "A bad one, my joints. They feel like they're grinding." "The headache. Splitting behind the eyes." Elena nodded. "Stage 2, intracranial pressure." "Holloway," Elena barked. "Get up." Holloway looked up, eyes red-rimmed. "What's the point? We're breathing it. We're all going to die." Elena walked over, grabbed Holloway by the front of his scrubs, and hauled him to his feet. She wasn't gentle. She pinned him against the counter. "Listen to me, doctor," she hissed, her face inches from his. "You took an oath, do no harm. Giving up is doing harm. You are going to treat your patients until you can't stand up. Do you understand?" Holloway stared at her, shocked by the ferocity. I understand." "Good, check Miller's vitals. Start a second line. I want him on broad-spectrum antibiotics and high-dose steroids. Reduce the inflammation in the brain." "Steroids will suppress his immune system," Holloway argued instinctively. "His immune system is what's killing him," Elena countered. "The cytokine storm is shredding his organs. Suppress the response, buy him time." Holloway blinked. It was a sophisticated immunological call. "How do you know that?" "Just do it," Elena said. She turned to Davis and Rogers. "You too, we need to build a positive pressure zone." "We don't have the equipment," Rogers said. "We have tape, we have plastic sheeting, and we have oxygen tanks," Alina said. "We are going to tent the trauma bay. We pump pure oxygen in. It creates a higher pressure inside the tent than outside. The virus can't push in against the gradient." She moved toward the trauma supplies. "Move," she commanded. The agents moved. For the next hour, they worked. It was a surreal, feverish construction project. They taped heavy plastic sheeting from the ceiling to the floor around Bay 4, creating a translucent cube. They ran oxygen tubing from the wall outlets, cranking the flow to maximum. Inside the tent, the air felt cooler, crisp. It hissed with the sound of pure O2. "Get inside," Alina ordered the 3 agents and Holloway. "Take turns sleeping. Limit your exertion. Oxygen is fuel." "What about you?" Miller asked. He was sitting on a gurney inside the plastic tent, an IV line running into his arm. He looked like a specimen in a jar. "I have to monitor the perimeter," Alina said from outside the plastic. "You're exposing yourself," Miller said. "I'm already exposed," Alina said. "We all are, it's just a matter of viral load." She turned away, walking back to the darkened nurse's station. She sat in the chair where she had sat 1,000 times before to chart ankle sprains and sore throats. Now, she sat in the dark, watching the red lights of the monitors. She needed to think. The rat in the ceiling bothered her. If the rats were infected, the building integrity was compromised. But more importantly, the speed of the symptoms on Miller was impossible. Standard Marburg takes 5–10 days. The weaponized Soviet strains she knew took 24–48 hours. Miller was symptomatic in 1 hour. That meant this wasn't just a virus, it was a binary weapon. She pulled the prisoner's intake form from the trash, where the clerk had dropped it. Name John Doe. Origin unknown. Possessions 1 leather satchel, confiscated by FBI. Alina looked at the counter where the agents had dumped their gear. The prisoner's satchel was there, sitting next to Miller's gun. She stood up and walked over to it. It was a worn brown leather bag, cheap, Eastern European manufacture. She put on a fresh pair of gloves. She opened the bag. Inside, there were no clothes, no passport. There was a metal canister, brushed aluminum, cold, and a notebook. Alina opened the notebook. It was filled with handwritten Cyrillic, but not Russian. It was Ukrainian dialect mixed with chemical shorthand. She scanned the pages. Her eyes widened. Project Vesta. Modification, NZ7. Delivery, aerosol plus catalyst. She read the last entry, dated 2 days ago. The catalyst is in the water. We carry the seed. When the seed meets the water, the garden blooms. Alina froze. The water. She looked at the water cooler in the corner of the waiting room. She looked at the sink where she had just washed her hands. It wasn't just airborne. The prisoner wasn't just a carrier. He was a trigger. She grabbed the radio. "Miller," she said, her voice piercing the plastic tent. Miller looked up through the sheeting. He looked like a ghost. "Don't drink the water," Alina said. Miller held up a cup he had just filled from the tap inside the bay. He froze. "What?" "Put it down," Alina said. "The notebook, it says the catalyst is water-soluble. Did the prisoner ask for water in the van?" Miller thought, his brow furrowing in pain. Yeah, he was begging for it. We gave him a bottle. And did he drink it? He chugged it, then he spit some of it up. Elena closed her eyes. He activated the viral load in his own stomach, she said. The virus was dormant until it hit the catalyst. He turned himself into a bomb. As she looked at the sink, and if it's in the local water supply. She didn't finish the thought. If the catalyst was in the city water and the virus was released. Elena, Miller called out. He sounded weak. I can't feel my feet. Elena dropped the notebook. She walked back to the plastic tent. She unzipped the seam and stepped inside. The oxygen-rich air hit her. Miller was lying back. His feet were pale. The capillary refill was non-existent. Peripherals shut down. My feet, Miller whispered. They're gone. Elena lifted the sheet covering his legs. His feet weren't gone. They were purple. The marbling had reached his ankles. It's okay, Elena said softly. She lied. It wasn't okay. It's just circulation. Holloway increased the fluids. Holloway shook his head. I can't. He's fluid overloaded. If I give him more, he'll drown. Elena looked at Miller. He was looking at her with terrified, childlike eyes. The tough federal agent was gone. Am I going to make it? He asked. Elena took his hand. She didn't care about the contamination anymore. She held his hand through the glove. I need you to focus, she said. I need you to stay with me because I can't hold this room alone. I'm tired, Miller said. I know, Elena said, but you can't sleep, not yet. Suddenly the radio on Miller's belt, which Elena had returned to him, beeped. It wasn't the local SWAT channel. It was a priority override signal, a tone Elena recognized. Miller fumbled for it. Miller, he wheezed. Agent Miller, a voice said. It was crisp, digital, and cold. This is Director Vaughn, National Security Branch. We have received your situation report. Miller's eyes lit up. Director, sir, we are trapped. We need immediate medevac. Negative, Agent, the voice said. We have analyzed the threat profile based on the symptoms described. The protocol is containment. We are contained, Miller said. We locked the doors. The protocol, the director continued, is absolute containment. Agent, you are to maintain the seal until the neutralization team arrives. When, Miller asked, when are they coming? ETA 20 minutes. They will sanitize the site. Elena snatched the radio from Miller's hand. Sanitize, she said into the mic. Define sanitize, director. There was a pause. Who is this? This is the person keeping your agent alive, Elena said. Does sanitize mean extraction or does it mean incineration? Silence. The pathogen cannot be allowed to leave that wing, the director said. Standard protocol for a level 5 biological breach with no known antidote is thermal neutralization. Miller gasped, thermal. They're going to burn it, Elena said, looking at Miller. They're going to burn the hospital down with us inside. She pressed the talk button again. Director, she said, we are still alive, we have survivors. You are casualties, the director said, his voice devoid of emotion. You just haven't died yet. Make your peace, Agent. Vaughn out. The line clicked dead. Miller stared at the radio. Then he looked at Elena. They wrote us off, he whispered. My own people. They're scared, Elena said. They're running the numbers. 5 people versus 5 million. It's easy math for them. She stood up. The calm was gone. A cold, hard rage replaced it. But they forgot one variable, Elena said. What? Holloway asked. Me, Elena said. She walked out of the tent. She went to the trauma cart. She picked up a scalpel. She picked up a roll of heavy-duty duct tape. She picked up the prisoner's canister. What are you doing? Rogers asked, peering through the plastic. If they want a war, Elena said, I'm going to give them one. She turned to the group. We have 20 minutes before the incineration team arrives, she announced. I'm going to make a phone call. The phones are dead, Miller reminded her weakly. Not the one I have, Elena said. She walked to her locker in the break room. She spun the combination lock. Inside, behind her spare cardigan and a box of tampons, was a false bottom. She pried it open with the scalpel. There lay a phone. It was old, a Nokia brick. The battery was taped to the back. She picked it up. She powered it on. It didn't search for a network. It connected directly to a satellite uplink. She dialed a number she hadn't dialed in 12 years. It rang once. Identify, a voice answered. No hello, just a demand. Call sign Wraith, Elena said. Authentication, Zulu X-Ray 9. I am in a kill box in Chicago. I have a binary weapon and federal assets who are about to be burned by their own command. I need an override. There was a silence on the other end, a long, heavy silence. Then, Wraith, we thought you were dead. Not yet, Elena said, but I'm working on it. Do I have the floor? You have the floor, Wraith. What do you need? I need the CDC, Elena said. The real CDC, not the political cleanup crew. And I need you to tell Director Vaughn that if he lights a match on this hospital, I will release the contents of the prisoner's notebook to the New York Times. Blackmail, the voice said with a hint of amusement. You haven't changed. I learned from the best, Elena said. I have 20 minutes. Get me your extraction team. Hold the line, Wraith. Cavalry is rolling. Elena hung up. She walked back to the ER floor. Miller was watching her. He had heard enough to know that the woman standing in front of him wasn't a nurse. Wraith, Miller whispered. Elena looked at him. She adjusted her gloves. That's classified agent, she said. Now sit up. We have to look presentable when the guests arrive. But as she spoke, the lights in the ER flickered and died completely. The backup generator had failed. Pitch blackness swallowed the room. And in the darkness, the sound of the negative pressure fan slowed, sputtered, and stopped. The seal was broken. Elation fans, moving toward the one thing that could save them or kill them all. The darkness was absolute. When the generator died, it didn't just take the lights. It took the hum of the refrigerator, the beep of the monitors, and the low, comforting drone of the ventilation system. It left behind a silence so deep it felt heavy, pressing against the eardrums like deep water. In the void, the only sound was the ragged breathing of 5 people, and the rain hammering against the roof, a sound that now felt miles away. Don't move, Elena's voice came from the blackness. It was calm, disembodied, anchoring them to reality. Nobody moves until I make light. I can't see, Rogers whimpered. I can't see anything. You don't need to see to breathe, Elena said. Stay put. A sharp crack echoed, followed by a hiss. A pale green light bloomed in the center of the room. Elena held a chemical glow stick, a standard item from the disaster kit. She cracked another, then another. She tossed them to the corners of the room. The ER was bathed in a sickly, radioactive emerald glow. Shadows stretched long and distorted across the floor. The plastic tent around Bay 4 looked like a ghostly monolith. Elena moved through the gloom. She checked the air vents first. Silence. The negative pressure was gone. The airflow had neutralized. That meant the air inside the room, the air thick with the viral load, was no longer being sucked through the filters. It was expanding. It was seeking cracks. Holloway, Elena said, the IV pumps, are they battery-backed? Holloway was crouching near the desk, his face a mask of green shadows. Yes, they have internal batteries, maybe 2 hours. Good, keep them running. The ventilation. Miller's voice drifted from inside the plastic tent. It was weak, slurry. The fan stopped. Elena walked to the tent. Through the plastic, Miller looked like a corpse in an aquarium. Power cut, Elena said. Vaughn pulled the plug. He wants us to suffocate, or he wants to flush us out. If the fan is off, Miller wheezed, the seal, the pressure. I know, Elena said. The pressure is equalizing. If we open a door now, the virus walks out. She turned to Davis and Rogers. They were huddled by the steel shutters, their faces illuminated by the green glow of a stick on the floor. Get up, Elena commanded. We have work to do. What work? Davis asked, his voice rising in panic. The lights are out, we're dead. We are not dead, Elena said. She walked over to the supply cart and grabbed more rolls of duct tape. But the air is trying to get out. We have to seal the manual seams. The door jams, the electrical outlets, the floor drains. Floor drains? Rogers asked. The plumbing connects to the main sewer line, Elena said. If the virus is water-soluble and the P-traps dry out, we vent gas into the city sewer. Tape them. 3 layers, go. The agents scrambled, grateful for a task, any task, to distract them from the suffocating reality. Elena walked back to the nurse's station. She looked at the red phone, dead. She checked her satellite phone. It had signal battery power, but she couldn't call back. She had to trust that Wraith meant something to the voice on the other end. She looked at the magnetic lock on the main doors. Without power, the magnets should have failed. The doors should have popped open. But they hadn't. Elena moved to the door. She inspected the frame. Mechanical deadbolts. When she had hit the override code, Omega 7 actual, it hadn't just cut the magnets. It had fired physical steel bolts into the floor and ceiling. A fail-safe for a total power loss scenario. She let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. They were locked in. Even without electricity, the tomb was sealed. But that also meant they couldn't get out, and neither could the air. Elena, Holloway shouted. Elena spun around. Holloway was standing by the plastic tent, looking inside. He's seizing. Elena ran. She didn't sprint. She flowed, avoiding the gurneys in the low light. Inside the tent, Miller was thrashing. It was the same motion the prisoner had made, the violent arching of the spine, the guttural choking sounds. Elena ripped the zipper open and dove inside. The oxygen-rich air hit her face, cooler than the stifling heat of the outer room. Miller's eyes were rolled back. Bloody foam was bubbling at his lips. To turn him, Elena barked. She grabbed Miller's shoulder. Holloway grabbed his hip. They rolled him onto his side just as he vomited. Black bile spilled onto the sterile sheets. Suction, Elena yelled. No power, Holloway screamed back. The wall suction is electric. Elena cursed. Manual aspirator, the turkey baster thing in the crash cart, get it. Holloway scrambled out. Elena held Miller down. He was strong even in his dying state. His muscles were rigid, corded like steel cables. Miller, she whispered into his ear. Stay with me, don't you quit, not yet. Miller's thrashing slowed. He gasped, sucking in air with a desperate, wet rattle. Elena, he choked out, my daughter. I know, Elena said, smoothing the hair back from his sweating forehead. We'll get you home to her. No, Miller whispered, his eyes focused on her, lucid for a terrifying second. Don't let me take this home. Elena froze. It was the request of a soldier. Don't let me be the vector. I won't, Elena promised. Holloway returned with the manual suction bulb. Elena cleared Miller's airway, her hands moving with mechanical precision in the dim green light. Miller slumped back, exhausted. His skin was hot to the touch, burning. Elena stepped out of the tent, zipping it shut. She stripped off her outer gloves and tossed them into the biohazard bin. He's progressing, Holloway said, his voice trembling. Stage 3 neurological involvement. He has maybe an hour. He has until I say he's done, Elena said hard. Thump. A sound from the exterior door. Not a knock, a muffled metallic clank, like something heavy being attached to the steel shutters. Elena went still. Did you hear that? Rogers whispered from the floor. Thump. Another one high on the door. Elena moved to the shutters. She pressed her ear against the cold steel. She heard voices, muffled, professional, low. Charge 1 set, charge 2 set, priming cord. Elena pulled back. Get back, she hissed at Davis and Rogers. Move away from the door now. What is it? Davis asked, freezing. Breaching charges, Elena said. Thermobaric, they aren't cutting the door, they're blowing it. But you said if they breach, the virus escapes, Rogers said. They aren't trying to save us, Elena said. Thermobaric charges create a high-pressure heat wave. It consumes all the oxygen in the blast radius. It incinerates biological matter. As she looked at the agents, they are sanitizing the site. Panic, raw and ugly, broke out. We have to tell them, Rogers screamed. He ran toward the door, pounding on it with his fists. Stop, we're alive, don't shoot, don't blow it. Rogers, get down, Elena tackled him. She drove him to the floor, just as a deafening boom shook the entire building. The steel shutters groaned. The metal warped inward, glowing red-hot in 2 distinct spots. Dust rained down from the ceiling. But the door held. The bolts, the heavy steel deadbolts Elena had engaged, kept the frame from flying inward. The explosion had weakened the metal, but it hadn't breached the seal. Check the seams, Elena shouted, rolling off Rogers. Checking for smoke, check for airflow. Davis crawled to the door, coughing in the dust. It held, Jesus, it held. But outside, the voices were louder now, angry. Charge failed, door is reinforced. Bring up the torch, we cut the hinges. Elena scrambled to her feet. She grabbed the heavy metal oxygen tank from the crash cart. Holloway, move Miller's tent back, she ordered. Get him into the trauma room, we need distance. What are you going to do? Holloway asked, dragging the gurney. I'm going to negotiate, Elena said. She walked to the warped steel door. She picked up a heavy wrench from the maintenance kit. She struck the door 3 times. Clang, clang, clang. Hold fire, she screamed through the steel. Hold fire. Outside, silence, then a voice, not Director Vaughn. This voice was rougher, tactical. Occupants of St. Jude's ER. This is U.S. Army Chemical Corps. Lay down on the floor. We are breaching for containment. If you cut those hinges, Elena shouted back. You release a pressurized aerosol cloud of Chimera 7 directly into your face masks. Your M50 filters are rated for tear gas and anthrax spores. They are not rated for a solvent-based viral hemorrhaging agent. Silence outside. The chemical corps leader was pausing. He knew his gear. He knew she was right. "Who is this?" the voice asked. "This is the person who sealed the wing," Alina said. "I have 5 survivors inside. I have a stable quarantine. If you breach, you break the seal. You kill us, you kill your team, and you kill the city." "We have orders, ma'am. The site is compromised. We have to neutralize." "Your orders are based on outdated intel," Alina yelled. "We have the source contained. We have the canister. We have the notebook." "Notebook." "The prisoner's notebook," Alina lied, well, half-lied. "It contains the synthesis formula. It contains the antidote profile. If you burn us, you burn the cure." It was a gamble. There was no antidote in the notebook, but soldiers were pragmatic. They wouldn't destroy a tactical asset if they could secure it. "Hold fast," the voice said. Alina leaned her forehead against the hot metal of the door. She was sweating. Her heart was hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. She had bought them minutes, not hours. She turned back to the room. The green glow of the chem lights was fading. The shadows were getting deeper. She looked at Rogers and Davis. They were huddled on the floor, clutching their knees. They were broken. The explosion had shattered their last reserve of courage. "Get up," Alina said gently. She walked over to them. She knelt down. "Look at me," she said. Davis looked up. His face was streaked with tears and dust. "We're going to die here, aren't we?" he whispered. "They're just going to wait until we stop talking, and then they're going to burn it." "No," Alina said. "That team outside, they are soldiers. They follow orders. Right now, their orders are to kill the virus. I just gave them a reason to think the virus is worth more alive than dead." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a protein bar she kept for long shifts. She broke it in half. "Eat," she said. "Sugar is energy. Energy is heat. You're going into shock." Davis took the half bar. His hand shook. "Who are you?" Rogers asked. "You talked to them like you knew the code." Alina smiled. It was a sad, tired smile. "I used to have a different job," she said. "A long time ago." "CIA?" Davis asked. "No," Alina said. "We didn't have 3 letters. We just had a job." Suddenly, a sound cut through the room. Not an explosion, not a scream. A phone ringing. Not the red phone, not Miller's radio. Alina's pocket, the satellite brick. She pulled it out. The screen glowed blue in the darkness. Unknown callers. She pressed answer. "Wraith," she said. "Stand down, Wraith," a new voice said. It wasn't her handler. It was a deep, gravelly voice, authoritative. "This is General Vance, JSOC. We have assumed command of the scene." Alina closed her eyes. JSOC. Joint Special Operations Command, the big guns. "General," Alina said, "took you long enough." "We had to confirm your authentication code," Vance said. "It's been 12 years, Alina. You're supposed to be dead in a climbing accident in Nepal." "I got better," Alina said. "Call off the dogs, General. The incineration team is drilling my hinges." "They are standing down as we speak," Vance said. "We are setting up a cordon, but Alina, we have a problem." "What problem?" "The water," Vance said. "We found traces in the city supply. The prisoner wasn't the only vector. He was a distraction." Alina felt the floor drop out from under her. "How widespread?" 4 sectors. We are locking down Chicago, but we need what you have. You said you have the notebook. Well, I have it. Does it have the catalyst formula? Alina looked at the leather bag on the counter. She hadn't finished reading it. I think so. You think so? Vance's voice hardened. Alina, listen to me. If we can't neutralize the water catalyst, we have to sterilize the source. That means the canister in that room. We are sending in a HAZMAT extraction team, Delta Force. They are coming in to get the book and the canister. And my people? Alina asked. Miller, the doctor. There was a pause. If they are symptomatic, Vance said, they stay. You know the protocol. No carriers leave the hot zone. Alina looked at Miller in the tent. He was dying, but he was alive. General, Alina said coldly, if your boys come in here and try to execute my patients, I will open the manual override on the ventilation and vent this entire room into your perimeter. You wouldn't, Vance said. I'm Wraith, Alina said. I burned a village in Sudan to stop an Ebola outbreak in 04. You know exactly what I would do. Silence on the line. You have 1 hour, Vance said. My team breaches in 60 minutes. If you can stabilize the patients for transport, they walk. If they are terminal, they stay. The line went dead. Alina lowered the phone. 1 hour. She had to cure a military-grade hemorrhagic fever in a blackout, with no power, no medicine, and a notebook written in code. She looked at Holloway. Doctor, she said, we need light, real light. We don't have electricity, Holloway said. We have magnesium, Alina said, in the flares in the emergency kit. That's fire, Holloway said. In an oxygen-rich tent, you'll blow us up. Then we don't put it in the tent, Alina said. We put it in the hall. We need to read. She walked to the counter and picked up the prisoner's notebook. Miller is dying, she said. This book tells us how the virus was made. If we know how it was made, we know how to unmake it. We're nurses, Holloway said, not biochemists. Tonight, Alina said, opening the book to a page covered in complex chemical structures. We are whatever we need to be. She cracked a flare. The room flooded with blinding, searing red light. Get the saline, she ordered. We're going to make a dialysis machine. The red light of the magnesium flare cast long, violent shadows against the walls of the ER. It hissed and sputtered on the linoleum floor, filling the room with the acrid smell of burning chemicals, a smell that barely masked the metallic tang of blood and the sour odor of fear. Time was no longer measured in minutes. It was measured in heartbeats and the dripping of saline. Hold the line steady, Alina commanded. Her voice was tight, strained, but unwavering. She and Dr. Holloway were bent over Agent Miller's arm. They were performing a procedure that shouldn't have been possible in a blackout, in a contaminated zone, with scavenged equipment. They were washing his blood. It's moving too slow, Holloway whispered, watching the dark venous blood flow through the makeshift tubing. They had rigged a gravity-fed lavage system. They were draining blood from Miller's median cubital vein, running it through a filter improvised from a hemodialysis cartridge found in the supply closet, mixing it with high-flow saline to dilute the viral concentration, and returning it to his body through a second line in his other arm. It was crude, it was dangerous. In a sterile ICU, it would be malpractice. Here, it was the only thing standing between Miller and a cerebral hemorrhage. Gravity is constant, Alina said, wiping sweat from her forehead with her shoulder. Raise the bag higher, we need flow pressure. Davis, the FBI agent, was standing on a chair, holding the saline bag against the ceiling. His arms were shaking. "My arms are burning," Davis groaned. "Burn is good," Elena said without looking up. "Burn means you're alive, hold it." She looked down at the notebook open on the counter next to Miller's arm. The flare light illuminated the jagged Cyrillic handwriting. Component 4, lipid-encapsulated viral shell, heavy molecular weight. "The virus is heavy," Elena muttered to herself. "It binds to the lipids. If we dilute the plasma, we reduce the binding efficiency. We wash it out." "Elena," Holloway said, his voice rising in panic, "look at the monitor." The battery-powered cardiac monitor was one of the few things still alive in the room. O2 SAT, 88%. CO2, 55 mmHg. "He's hypoxic," Holloway said. "He's not getting enough oxygen. The tank is empty." Elena looked at the oxygen tank they had rigged to the plastic tent. The needle was on the red peg, empty. She pulled the mask off her face. The air in the room was thick, hot, and heavy. It tasted stale. "It's not just him," Elena said. She took a breath and felt the resistance in her own lungs. "The CO2 levels in the room are rising. We've been sealed in here for 2 hours with no ventilation. We are rebreathing our own exhaust." She looked at Rogers, who was sitting by the door. He was yawning, a classic sign of carbon dioxide narcosis. "Rogers," Elena barked. Rogers blinked slowly. "Yeah, I'm just resting my eyes." "Stand up," Elena ordered. "Walk around. If you sleep, you don't wake up." "The generator is dead," Holloway said, checking Miller's pulse. "The fans are dead. We're in a submarine on the bottom of the ocean, Elena. We're going to suffocate before the virus even kills us." Elena looked at the ceiling. She looked at the black square, where the maintenance tile had been removed. "The fans are dead because the electric motors died," Elena said. "But the rooftop units are industrial. They have mechanical clutches, inertia flywheels." "So," Holloway asked. "So if I can get to the roof unit," Elena said, "I can disengage the motor and hand crank the impeller. If I can get it spinning, the draft will pull the air out. It won't be perfect, but it will clear the CO2. "The roof," Davis lowered the bag slightly, his face pale in the red light. "You mean crawl back up there with the rats?" "The rats are the least of our problems," Elena said. "The return duct is the dirtiest place in the building. It's where all the viral air has been collecting for the last 2 hours. Going in there is suicide." She looked at Miller. His chest was hitching. The O2 sat dropped to 86%. "But staying here is suicide too," she said. She walked to the supply cart. "Holloway, keep the fluids running. If his pressure drops below 90 systolic, clamp the line or you'll kill him." "Elena, you can't go up there," Holloway said, grabbing her arm. "You don't have a suit. A paper gown isn't going to stop a concentrated viral load in a confined space." Elena looked at him. "Then make me a suit." 10 minutes later, Elena looked like a creature from a nightmare. They had wrapped her in heavy-duty yellow hazardous waste bags, the thick plastic kind used for amputated limbs and biosludge. Every seam was sealed with silver duct tape. She wore double nitrile gloves taped at the wrists. On her head, she wore a clear plastic intubation hood, a rigid box usually placed over a patient's head during surgery. Holloway had taped the bottom of it to her shoulders, creating a sealed helmet. "Air supply?" Elena asked. Her voice echoed inside the plastic bucket. Holloway handed her a long length of oxygen tubing. I connected 3 lines together, Holloway said. It's about 40 feet. We hook one end to the last partial oxygen tank in the ambulance bay. It will feed fresh O2 directly into your helmet. It creates positive pressure. As long as the air is pushing out of your helmet, the virus can't get in. 40 feet, Alina said. That gets me to the vertical shaft. I have to climb the rest. If the tube kinks, Holloway warned, you suffocate. I know. Alina strapped the prisoner's heavy flashlight to her forearm with tape. She checked her belt. She had the multi-tool and a heavy wrench. She walked to the ladder. The room was silent, save for the hiss of the flare dying out. A second flare was lit, casting fresh, dancing shadows. If I don't come back in 20 minutes, Alina said through the plastic, assume the fan is broken. Use the oxygen tank to keep Miller alive as long as you can. Alina, Miller whispered from the gurney. He hadn't opened his eyes, but he was listening. Don't fall. I never fall, Alina lied. She climbed the ladder. Entering the ceiling crawl space was like entering a tomb. The darkness was total, broken only by the beam of her flashlight cutting through the dust. The air up here was hot, stiflingly hot. She crawled on her elbows and knees. The plastic suit crinkled loudly, a deafening sound in the silence. She felt the drag of the oxygen tube trailing behind her. It was her umbilical cord, her lifeline. 40 feet. She reached the junction where she had fixed the damper earlier. The dead rat was still there. It had bloated in the heat. She pushed past it, repulsed but focused. Ahead, the ductwork turned vertical, the main trunk line that led to the roof. It was a square shaft, 3 feet wide. Inside, there was a service ladder, iron rungs bolted to the sheet metal. Alina shimmied into the shaft. She looked up. The beam of her light died in the darkness above. It was maybe 20 feet to the roof hatch. Climbing, she whispered to herself. She reached up and grabbed the first rung. The plastic bag around her arm pulled tight, restricting her movement. As she pulled, her body felt heavy. She was 52 years old. She had old rotator cuff injuries from a crash in '08. Her knees ached in the damp weather. Pain is information, she told herself. It tells you the machine is still working. She climbed. Rung 1, rung 2, rung 3. The air in the vertical shaft was stagnant, thick. She could see particles floating in her flashlight beam, dust, or the virus. She focused on the hiss of oxygen in her helmet. Positive pressure, trust the physics. At 10 feet, the tube snagged. Her head jerked back as the line went taut. The tape around her neck dug into her skin. As she froze. If she pulled too hard, the tape would rip. The seal would break. If she climbed down to free it, she wasted energy she didn't have. She reached back with one hand, blindly feeling for the snag. The tube had caught on a jagged screw head protruding from the duct seam. She twisted her body, hanging by one arm, her feet scrabbling for purchase on the slippery metal. As she flicked the tube, it didn't move. Come on, she hissed. She swung her body, using the momentum to whip the line. It popped free. She gasped, sucking in the cool oxygen. She kept climbing. 15 feet, 18 feet. Her hand hit metal, the roof hatch. It wasn't a door. It was a maintenance panel inside the massive HVAC unit. She braced her legs against the sides of the shaft and pushed up on the panel. It didn't budge. Locked or rusted. She slammed the palm of her hand against it. Thud. Open, she grunted. She pulled the heavy wrench from her belt. She hammered the latch mechanism. Clang, clang. The sound was deafening inside the metal shaft. The latch gave way with a screech of shearing metal. Elena pushed the panel open and pulled herself up. She wasn't on the roof. She was inside the rooftop handling unit. It was a large metal room, the size of a shipping container, filled with filters and the massive scroll cage of the centrifugal fan. The rain hammered on the metal casing outside, a deafening roar. Elena shone her light on the fan. It was huge, a 6-foot wheel of steel blades connected to a massive electric motor by a series of rubber belts. It was silent still. "It's okay," Elena breathed. "Manual override." She scanned the unit. There. On the side of the fan shaft, there was a disengagement lever and a hand crank slot. She moved toward it. The plastic suit snagged on a sharp corner of the housing. R.I.P. The sound was distinct. Elena froze. She looked down at her leg. The yellow garbage bag had torn, a gash 6 inches long exposing her scrub pants. The positive pressure in her suit would push air out until the tank ran empty. Then the ambient air, the air from the dirty return duct, would seep in. She checked the tube. She had maybe 10 minutes of oxygen left. She didn't tape the tier. She didn't have time. She grabbed the clutch lever and yanked it down. The heavy rubber belts slackened. The fan was now disconnected from the frozen motor. She found the crank handle mounted on the wall. She slotted it into the gearbox. She tried to turn it. It wouldn't move. The inertia of a 6-foot steel fan was immense. It weighed hundreds of pounds. "Physics," she muttered. "Static friction is higher than kinetic friction. Just get it moving." She planted her feet. She gripped the handle with both hands. She screamed, a guttural, primal sound that was lost in the noise of the rain. She put her entire body weight, her entire history of violence and survival, into that handle. Kriyak. The metal groaned. The blades moved an inch. "Move," she screamed. She pushed again. The veins in her neck bulged. Her vision grayed at the edges. The fan turned, half a rotation. She kept pushing, stumbling as the handle reached the bottom of the arc, heaving as it came up. Round, round, round. Momentum began to build. The heavy steel wheel started to carry its own weight. Whoosh, whoosh. The blades began to cut the air. Elena spun the crank faster, running in a tight circle now, driving the gear. The draft caught. The air from the shaft below, the stale, deadly air from the ER, was sucked up and blasted out the exhaust vent. She felt the suction. It pulled at her torn suit. She cranked harder. She needed to get the RPMs high enough that the flywheel effect would keep it spinning for a while. Her muscles burned. Her lungs screamed for more oxygen than the thin tube could provide. Vaster. The fan was whining now, a low, steady hum. She let go of the handle. The fan kept spinning. Momentum, it was a beautiful thing. She collapsed against the metal wall, sliding down to the floor of the unit. She watched the fan spin. It was moving enough air to clear the room below in 5 minutes. She looked at her leg, the tear. She reached for the roll of tape on her belt. She taped the rip shut. Too late, maybe. She checked her watch. 56 minutes since the JSOC call. 4 minutes left. She had to get back down. She had to stabilize Miller for transport. She dragged herself back to the hatch. The descent was faster. Gravity was on her side, but her arms were jelly. She slid down the ladder using her boots as brakes. She hit the bottom of the vertical shaft and crawled back through the horizontal duct. She saw the light from the ER through the opening. She dropped down from the ceiling, landing hard on the floor. Holloway and the agents jumped. Elena tore the plastic helmet off. She ripped the bags off her body. She took a deep breath. The air was different. It was still warm, but the heaviness was gone. The metallic taste of CO2 was fatting. "The fan is running," Elena gasped, leaning against the ladder. "CO2 is clearing." Holloway looked at the monitor. CO2 40 mmHg, dropping. "You did it," Holloway whispered. "Miller?" Elena asked, walking toward the gurney. Miller's eyes were open. He looked terrible, pale, sunken, bruised, but he was awake. "Oh, the headache," Miller whispered. "It's less." "The pressure is down," Elena said. "The dialysis plus the fresh air, we bought you time." Suddenly, a massive, booming voice echoed from outside the building. It was amplified by a military-grade loudspeaker. "This is Delta Force. We have SCCURED the perimeter. We are breaching in 2 MINUTES. Stand clear of the doors." The hour was up. Elena looked at the steel shutters. "They're coming," Davis said. "Are they going to shoot us?" "No," Elena said. She walked to the counter and picked up the prisoner's canister. She picked up the notebook. She turned to Miller. "Can you stand?" she asked. Miller tried to sit up. He grimaced. "I don't think so." "You have to," Elena said. "If you walk out, you're a survivor. If they carry you out, you're a package, and packages get incinerated." She grabbed his arm. "Get up, soldier, on your feet." Miller gritted his teeth. He grabbed Elena's shoulder. With a groan of agony, he pulled himself upright. He swayed, but he stood. "Holloway grabbed the IV bags," Elena ordered. "You walk with him. Davis, Rogers, flank him. You look like a security detail, not victims. Do you understand?" "Yes," Davis said, straightening his back. He wiped the tears from his face. Elena walked to the front of the group. She stood facing the steel shutters. She waited. Boom! The charges detonated. The steel doors were blown off their hinges, falling inward with a crash that shook the foundations. Smoke billowed in. Through the smoke, beams of tactical lights cut through the darkness. Laser sights danced on Elena's chest. 4 figures in full-level HAZMAT suits. The heavy spaceman suits with self-contained breathing apparatus stepped through the breach. They carried HK-416 rifles. "Hands," the lead operator screamed. "Show ME hands." Elena didn't raise her hands. She held the canister in her left hand and the notebook in her right. She held them out like an offering or a threat. "The site is secure," Elena said. Her voice was calm, cutting through the shouting. "The package is stabilized, the data is secured." The lead operator stopped. He looked at the woman in the dirty scrubs, standing amidst the wreckage, holding the most dangerous biological weapon on Earth like it was a cup of coffee. He lowered his rifle slightly. "Identify," he barked. "Nurse," Elena said. "Just the nurse." She stepped forward. "And you're late." The breach of the St. Jude's emergency room was a study in controlled violence. 4 operators from the 1st Special Forces Operational Detachment Delta moved through the smoke like predatory insects. They were encased in level A HAZMAT suits, fully encapsulated, positive pressure environments that made them look like bulky astronauts. Their movements were jerky, mechanical, but terrifyingly fast. Clear left, clear right. The commands were shouted through external speakers on their suits, distorting their voices into metallic barks. Elena stood her ground in the center of the ruined ER. She didn't flinch as a gloved hand shoved Dr. Holloway against the wall. She didn't blink when Agent Davis was kicked behind the knees, forcing him to the ground. "Secure the ASSETS," the lead operator screamed. Two operators rushed toward Elena. One reached for the aluminum canister in her left hand. The other reached for the notebook in her right. Elena dropped the canister. It hit the floor with a hollow clang. The operators froze. One of them actually flinched back, expecting it to shatter. "Careful," Elena said. Her voice was calm, cutting through the chaos. "It's double-walled aluminum. It won't break, but the seal is fragile." The lead operator, marked by a red stripe on his helmet, stepped forward. He leveled his rifle at Elena's chest. The laser dot danced on her dirty scrub top, right over her heart. "You dropped a biological weapon," the lead operator said. His voice was low, dangerous. "I put it down," Elena corrected, "so I could talk to you without you shooting me." She held the notebook tight against her chest. "I am Sierra 1, the operator said. "You are to surrender all intel and assume the prone position for decontamination processing." "No," Elena said. The word hung in the air, heavier than the smoke. Sierra 1 tilted his head. He wasn't used to hearing no from civilians. "Excuse me." "I said no," Elena repeated. "We are not assuming the prone position. We are walking out. My patient," she pointed to Agent Miller, who was swaying but standing, supported by Holloway and Rogers, "is critical. He needs immediate dialysis and an antiviral cocktail. If you put him on the floor, he dies." "That is not your call," Sierra 1 said. "My orders are to secure the biothreat and sanitize the site. Personnel are secondary." "Personnel are evidence," Elena snapped. "If you let a federal agent die on your watch because you were too busy playing soldier, General Vance will have your stripes." Sierra 1 stiffened. "How do you know Vance?" "Ask him," Elena said. "He's on the comms, isn't he? Ask him about Wraith." Sierra 1 hesitated. He touched the side of his helmet, listening to a voice that Elena couldn't hear. The ER was silent, save for the heavy breathing of the men in the suits and the distant spin of the rooftop fan Elena had cranked by hand. After a long moment, Sierra 1 lowered his rifle slightly. "Command confirms your ID," he said, though he sounded skeptical. "But that doesn't change the protocol. You are all carriers. You are hot. We cannot transport you in the bird. We have to wait for the containment transport truck." "How long?" Elena asked. 2 hours. Elena looked at Miller. He was gray. His eyes were unfocused. He was standing on sheer willpower and the remnants of the adrenaline spike. 2 hours would kill him. "He doesn't have 2 hours," Elena said. "He has 20 minutes before his kidneys shut down completely." "Then he dies," Sierra 1 said simply. "I'm not risking a $10 million helicopter and a flight crew for one casualty." He stepped closer, holding out his hand. "Give me the notebook." Elena looked at the notebook in her hand. Then she looked at the lead operator. "You're not here to save us," she realized aloud. "You're here to clean the mess." "I'm here to stop a pandemic," Sierra 1 said. "The notebook." Elena took a step back. She opened the notebook. "This book," Elena said, Contains the synthesis formula for the chimera strain. It lists the protein binders, the incubation accelerators. I know what it is, Sierra 1 said. Hand it over. Does it list the catalyst? Elena asked. Sierra 1 paused. The what? The water catalyst, Elena said. The prisoner didn't just cough on people, he ingested a binary trigger. The notebook says the virus reacts to a specific compound in the municipal water supply. Do you know which compound? Sierra 1 didn't answer. His body language shifted. He didn't know. You don't know, Elena said. So you're going to take this book to a lab. It will take them 6 hours to translate the code and find the reference. By then, half of Chicago will have turned on their taps to make coffee, and the dying starts. She ripped a page out of the notebook. Hey, Sierra 1 lunged. Elena held the page up. She pulled a lighter from her pocket, taken from the prisoner's satchel earlier. She flicked it. The flame danced inches from the paper. Back off, Elena shouted. The operators raised their rifles again. Drop the weapon, Sierra 1 screamed. It's paper, Elena yelled back. But it's the only map you have. This page lists the chemical profile of the catalyst. If I burn it, you're flying blind. You're bluffing, Sierra 1 said. Am I? Elena's eyes were cold, dead things. I just manually vented a biolab. I climbed a 40-foot shaft in a garbage bag. Do I look like I'm bluffing? She moved the flame closer to the corner of the page. The paper curled slightly from the heat. What do you want? Sierra 1 asked. I want a medevac, Elena said. For him, for the doctor, for the agents. We can't take them, Sierra 1 repeated. It's a biohazard risk. You have isolation pods in the bird, Elena said. Standard loadout for Delta HAZMAT. Don't lie to me. Sierra 1 stared at her. We have 2 pods, you have 5 people. Take Miller, Elena said, and the doctor to treat him. They go now. And the others? We wait for the truck, Elena said. I stay here with the book. When I get confirmation that Miller is at Walter Reed, you get the page. Sierra 1 looked at Miller. The agent was sagging, his head lolling on his chest. He's a heavy load, Sierra 1 muttered. He might die in the air. That's a risk I'm taking, Elena said. Do we have a deal? Sierra 1 looked at the flame. He looked at the determination in the nurse's face. He respected force, and she was projecting more force than anyone he had met in a long time. Load him up, Sierra 1 barked to his team. Get the pod ready. 2 operators moved to Miller. They didn't lift him gently. They grabbed him by the harness of the gurney and hauled him toward the exit. Wait, Miller croaked. He tried to pull away. Elena. Elena walked over to him. She kept the lighter lit, watching the remaining operators. Go, she said to Miller. You made it. You, Miller wheezed. You come with us. I have to close up, Elena said softly. I'm the charge nurse. It's my shift. Miller looked at her. His eyes were filled with a mixture of confusion and gratitude. He knew she was trading herself for him. Thank you, he whispered. Don't thank me, Elena said. Just don't drink the water. They zipped Miller into a thick, clear plastic transport pod. It looked like a body bag, but with air filters. Holloway was shoved toward the second pod. Me, Holloway stammered, but I'm not sick yet. You're the attending physician, Elena said. He needs a doctor who knows his progression. Go. Holloway looked at Elena. He looked at the ruined ER. He realized he was leaving hell. Elena, Holloway said, you saved us. Go, she commanded. The operators carried the pods out into the rain. The sound of the helicopter rotors, which had been a distant thrum, suddenly roared to life directly outside the bay. The downwash blew debris into the room. Elena watched them go. Sierra 1 remained. He was standing with the two remaining operators, watching Elena. "They're airborne," Sierra 1 said after a minute, listening to his headset. "Now the page." Elena extinguished the lighter. She folded the page and handed it to him. Sierra 1 took it. He scanned it. He didn't read Cyrillic, but he recognized the chemical diagrams. "Is this it?" he asked. "The catalyst." "Chloramine," Elena said. "They treat the city water with chloramine. The virus binds to it. It turns the water into a delivery system." Sierra 1 looked at her. "You read this, you speak Russian." "I speak chemistry," Elena said. She handed him the rest of the notebook. "Now," she said, "where is the truck?" Sierra 1 handed the notebook to one of his subordinates. He turned back to Elena. "There is no truck," he said. Elena went still. "What?" "The truck is 4 hours out," Sierra 1 said. "And my orders were clear. Secure the intel, secure the weapon, contain the site." He raised his rifle. "We have the intel, we have the weapon." He looked at Elena, Davis, and Rogers. "The site is still compromised." Davis let out a strangled sob. You promised." "I promised to take the agent," Sierra 1 said coolly. "He's gone, the rest of you are loose ends." Elena looked at the rifle. She calculated the distance. 10 feet, too far to rush him. She looked at Davis and Rogers. They were unarmed. She had played her hand. She had saved Miller, but she had left herself exposed. "You're going to execute civilians?" Elena asked. "In a hospital." "I'm going to neutralize a biological threat," Sierra 1 said. "It's clean, it's necessary." "General Vance approved this?" Elena asked. "General Vance isn't here," Sierra 1 said. "I am." He clicked the safety off. "Kneel down," he ordered. Davis and Rogers fell to their knees, begging. "Please, please, we're FBI. We're on your side." "Kneel," Sierra 1 said to Elena. Elena stood tall. She adjusted her dirty scrub top. She smoothed her hair. "No," she said. "I will shoot you where you stand," Sierra 1 said. "Then shoot me," Elena said. "But look me in the eye when you do it." Sierra 1 aimed. His finger tightened on the trigger. Elena didn't close her eyes. She stared into the black visor of his helmet. Do it, she thought, make the choice. Suddenly, the radio on Sierra 1's chest blared loud enough for everyone to hear. "Sierra 1, this is Overlord. Cease fire. Repeat, cease fire." Sierra 1 flinched. He held his fire. "Overlord, this is Sierra 1. Site is not sanitized." "Stand down, Sierra 1, the voice, General Vance, boomed. "We have a situation, the page you just uploaded, the catalyst data." "Affirmative," Sierra 1 said. "It's encrypted," Vance said. "The chemical structure is incomplete. We can't synthesize the neutralizer without the key." Sierra 1 looked at the page in his hand. Then he looked at Elena. Elena allowed herself a very small, very cold smile. "I told you," Elena said softly. "I speak chemistry, and I know how to leave out a decimal point." Sierra 1 lowered his rifle. He sounded furious. "You gave us bad intel." "I gave you incomplete intel," Elena said. "Insurance, because I knew you were a cleaner, not a rescuer." "Put her on," Vance ordered. Sierra 1 walked over and held the radio to Elena's face. "I'm here, General," Elena said. "You played me, Wraith," Vance said. "You held back the sequence." "I secured my team," Elena said. "You want the rest of the formula, you send the truck, a real one, with a medical team, not a firing squad." There was a long silence on the line. "Truck is 10 minutes out," Vance said. "Sierra 1, if you scratch her paint, I will court-martial you so hard your grandchildren will feel it. Secure the VIP." "VIP?" Sierra 1 asked, stunned. "The nurse," Vance said. "She is now a strategic asset. Guard her with your life." Sierra 1 lowered the radio. He looked at Elena with a mix of hatred and begrudging respect. "A strategic asset," he muttered. He signaled his men. "Weapons tight, set up a perimeter, we wait for the truck." Elena let out a breath. Her legs felt like water. She leaned against the nurse's station counter to keep from collapsing. Davis and Rogers were sobbing on the floor, clutching each other. Elena looked down at them. "Get up," she said gently. "It's over." She looked around the ER. It was a wreck, blood on the floor, holes in the walls, the ceiling torn open. But they were alive. She walked over to the intake desk. She picked up a bottle of hand sanitizer, one of the few things that hadn't been used or destroyed. She pumped a dollop into her hands and rubbed them together. The smell of alcohol was sharp and clean. She was just a nurse again, waiting for her shift to end. The transport truck arrived 12 minutes later. It was a massive, sterile mobile laboratory. Medical teams in white biosuits swarmed the building. They were gentle, professional. They loaded Davis and Rogers onto stretchers. They approached Elena. "Ma'am," a medic asked, "can you walk?" Elena nodded. "I'm fine." She wasn't fine. She was exhausted, dehydrated, and exposed to a lethal pathogen. But she walked. She walked out of the ER doors. The rain had stopped. The sun was just beginning to crest over the horizon, painting the wet asphalt of the parking lot in shades of gray and silver. The parking lot was filled with military vehicles, Hummers, trucks, floodlights. Sierra 1 was standing by the back of the transport truck. He watched her approach. "The formula," he said. Elena reached into her pocket. She pulled out a small scrap of paper she had torn from the page before burning the rest. "Chloramine T," she said. "Not just chloramine. The T variant is the bond. You need a sulfur-based neutralizer." She handed him the scrap. Sierra 1 took it. He looked at it, then at her. "Who are you really?" he asked. "You're not Wraith. Wraith is a ghost story from the Cold War." Elena pulled her cardigan tight around her scrubs. "I'm Elena," she said. "I work the night shift." She climbed into the back of the truck. As the doors closed, shutting out the morning light, she finally allowed her hands to shake. The transport truck was a windowless steel box that smelled of ozone and despair. Inside, the vibration of the engine was a constant, bone-rattling hum. Elena sat on a bench bolted to the wall, wrapped in a thermal blanket that felt like tinfoil. Across from her, Agents Davis and Rogers stared at the floor, their eyes vacant, traumatized by the proximity of death and the humiliating realization of their own helplessness. In the center of the aisle, secured by heavy nylon straps, was the isolation pod containing Agent Miller. He wasn't moving. The pod's internal monitor glowed with a rhythmic, sluggish red line. Heart rate 42. BP 70-40. He was circling the drain. Elena watched the numbers. She didn't pray. She calculated. Time since exposure, 4 hours. Time since dialysis, 45 minutes. Viral load, peak saturation. The truck took a sharp turn, then slowed. The hiss of air brakes cut through the hum. The rear doors hissed open. Light flooded in. Not the soft morning sun of the parking lot, but the harsh, sterile blue-white glare of a hangar bay. Move, move, move. The shouting was back, but this time it wasn't tactical, it was clinical. A team of figures in white Tyvek suits swarmed the truck. They didn't carry rifles, they carried stretchers and sprayers. Ambulatory subjects to Sector A. A voice boomed over a loudspeaker. Critical subject to Sector B. Immediate decontamination protocol in effect. A medic grabbed Alina's arm. Ma'am, step down, do not touch the rails. Alina stepped down onto the concrete floor. She was in a massive warehouse. Plastic curtains hung from the ceiling, dividing the space into zones. Men with backpack sprayers were misting the ground with bleach solution as she walked. It was a biosecurity field site, a place designed to scrub the humanity off you along with the virus. Strip, the medic ordered, pointing to a plastic tent labeled DECON1. All of it, Davis asked, his voice trembling. Everything, the medic said. Clothes, shoes, jewelry, watches, anything that was in the hot zone is incinerated. Move. Alina didn't hesitate. She walked into the tent. It was freezing inside. A row of metal nozzles lined the ceiling. The floor was a metal grate over a chemical drain. She removed her cardigan, the one she had worn for 3 years of shifts. She dropped it into the red biohazard bin. She removed her scrub top, stained with Miller's blood and the black grime of the ventilation shaft. She removed her pants, her socks, her shoes. She stood naked on the cold grate. She looked at her body. Bruises were forming on her arms from the climb. A long, red scratch ran down her thigh where the suit had torn. She wasn't ashamed. She was a machine undergoing maintenance. Eyes forward, a voice commanded. Arms out, legs apart. The nozzles activated. It wasn't warm water. It was a high-pressure chemical fog, a mixture of weak hypochlorite and surfactant. It hit the skin like sandblasting. It stung the eyes, the nose, the open cuts. Next to her, through the translucent divider, she heard Rogers sobbing. Alina closed her eyes and turned her face into the spray. She held her breath, letting the chemicals scour the outer layer of her epidermis. Cleanse the vessel. The spray stopped. A rinse. Cold water hammered down, washing away the chemical burn. A step forward. Alina stepped through the curtain into the clean zone. A nurse was waiting with a towel and a hospital gown. She didn't look at Alina's face. She looked at a barcode bracelet she clamped onto Alina's wrist. Subject 4. No names, Alina noted silently. Just numbers. She put on the gown. It was thin, papery. Medical assessment, the nurse said, pointing to a row of cots. Alina walked to the cot, but she didn't sit down. She looked for Miller. She saw him being wheeled into a glass-walled enclosure in the center of the hangar, a mobile ICU unit. A team of 4 doctors was swarming him. The monitor above his bed was flashing red. V-fib. His heart was quivering. It wasn't pumping. He's coding, Alina said. She started to walk toward the ICU. Ma'am, the nurse grabbed her shoulder. You are in quarantine. You cannot leave this zone. Alina spun around. She grabbed the nurse's wrist. She didn't squeeze hard, just enough to break the hold. I am the attending nurse for Subject 1, Alina said. And if you don't let me pass, he dies. Security, the nurse shouted. Two MPs stepped forward, blocking Alina's path. Inside the glass cube, the team was charging the paddles. Clear. Thump. Miller's body arched off the table. The line remained flat. Again charged to 200. Alina looked at the MP. He was young. Soldier, Alina said. That man in there is a federal agent. He has the virus in his brain stem. If they shock him again without stabilizing the intracranial pressure, they will blow out his brain. The MP hesitated. Let me through, Alina commanded. Let her through. The voice came from behind the MPs. A man in a gray suit stood there. He wasn't wearing hazmat gear. He was standing behind a portable glass partition holding a phone. It was General Vance. The MPs stepped aside. Alina ran. She burst into the ICU cube. The air inside was sterile, pressurized. Clear, the doctor was about to shock Miller again. Stop, Alina shouted. She slammed her hand on the crash cart, killing the charge. The doctor, a tall man with panicked eyes behind his face shield, spun around. Who the hell are you? Get out. Look at his pupils, Alina barked. Look at them. The doctor paused, confused by the authority in her voice. He lifted Miller's eyelid. The pupil was blown, fixed and dilated. He has cerebral edema, Alina said, shoving past the doctor to the head of the bed. The shock is raising his ICP. You're killing him. He's in VFib, the doctor argued. We have to restart the heart. His heart stopped because his brain is crushing his brainstem, Alina said. Push mannitol, 100 grams, hyperventilate him, then shock him. The doctor froze. That's a neuro protocol. This is a cardiac arrest. Do it, Alina screamed, or I will break your fingers and do it myself. The doctor looked at the monitor. He looked at Alina. Push the mannitol, he whispered to the nurse. The nurse injected the osmotic diuretic into Miller's central line. Bag him, Alina ordered the respiratory tech. Fast, blow off the CO2, constrict the vessels. The tech squeezed the ambu bag rapidly. Alina watched the monitor. 10 seconds, 20 seconds. Now, Alina said, shock him. The doctor charged the paddles. Clear. Thump. Miller's body jerked. Everyone stared at the screen. Silence. Beep. Beep, beep. Sinus rhythm, slow but organized. We have a pulse, the nurse breathed. The doctor slumped against the wall. He looked at Alina with wide eyes. Who are you? He asked. I'm the triage nurse, Alina said. She picked up a suction catheter. Now give me the inhibitor, the experimental one General Vance promised. The inhibitor, the doctor shook his head. It's untested. It's a binary protein blocker. We don't even know the dosage. The notebook says the virus binds to lipids, Alina said. So you need a high dose to saturate the fat cells. Give him a double loading dose. Double, the doctor scoffed. That could cause renal failure. His kidneys are already dead, Alina said. If you don't kill the virus in the next 10 minutes, the rest of him joins them. Give him the drug. The doctor hesitated. He looked through the glass wall. General Vance gave a curt nod. The doctor opened a refrigerated metal case. He pulled out a vial of clear blue liquid. Project Chimera, viral antagonist V9. He drew it up into a syringe. IV push, Alina said. He injected it into the line. They watched the clear blue liquid snake down the tube and enter Miller's arm. "Now we wait," Alina said. She didn't leave the bedside. She stood there, dripping wet in her paper gown, holding Miller's hand. Minutes passed. The hangar was a buzz of activity outside, but inside the cube, time stood still. Miller's temperature was 104.5. Alina took a wet cloth and wiped his forehead. "Come on, Miller," she whispered. "Fight it." Suddenly, Miller gasped. His eyes flew open. They weren't looking at Alina. They were looking at the ceiling, seeing things that weren't there. "The water," he screamed, his voice a ragged tear. "Don't drink the water." "It's okay," Alina said, leaning over him. "We stopped it. The water is safe." "My chest," Miller clawed at his chest. "It burns." "That's the cure," Alina said. "It's burning the virus out." Miller focused on her face. The panic in his eyes receded slightly. "Alina, I'm here. Did we win?" Alina looked at the monitor. The heart rate was stabilizing. The oxygen saturation was climbing. 92%, 94%. "Yeah," Alina said softly. "We won." Miller closed his eyes. His breathing deepened into a natural, restorative sleep. Alina let go of his hand. She turned around. The doctor was watching her. He was holding a clipboard. "You're not a nurse," he said. It wasn't an accusation. It was a statement of fact. "I am," Alina said. "I'm excellent at triage." She walked out of the cube. General Vance was waiting for her. He was an older man, steel gray hair, wearing a suit that cost more than Alina made in a year. He leaned on a cane, an old war injury. "Wraith," Vance said. Alina stopped. She didn't salute. She didn't smile. "General." "You look like hell," Vance said. "I feel like it," Alina said. "Is the city secure?" "The water department flushed the system with the sulfur compound you identified," Vance said. "We caught it in the reservoirs. No casualties outside the hospital. And inside, 2 fatalities, the prisoner and Agent Keller. Your quick thinking with the ventilation saved the others." He handed her a bottle of water, sealed. Alina looked at it. She cracked the seal and drank the whole thing in one long pull. "So," Vance said, "what happens now?" "Now," Alina crushed the empty bottle. "Now you process me, you debrief me, and then I go home." Vance laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. "Home, Alina, you just exposed yourself as a Tier 1 operator in the middle of a domestic crisis. You think I can just let you go back to checking blood pressure at St. Jude's?" "I like checking blood pressure," Alina said. "It's quiet." "You're wasted there," Vance said. "We have a situation in Yemen, a viral outbreak with similar markers. We need a specialist." Alina looked at him. She saw the game, the eternal game of assets and utilization. "I'm retired, General," she said. "Nobody retires from the life," Vance said. "You just take breaks." "I'm not taking a break," Alina said. "I'm hiding. There's a difference." "Hiding from what?" "From who I was," Alina said. "From the person who burns villages to save cities." She looked back at the glass cube where Miller was sleeping. "Tonight I didn't burn the village," she said. "I saved the people inside. That's a better feeling." Vance studied her. He tapped his cane on the concrete. "You know I can't let this slide," he said. "The FBI agent, Miller, he knows you're not a civilian." "He's loyal," Alina said. "He won't talk." "And the others, Davis, Rogers, the doctor. They saw a nurse who was good at her job. Elena said. People see what they want to see, General. If you tell them I was just a panicked woman who got lucky, they'll believe it, because it's safer than believing the truth. And what is the truth? Vance asked. Elena stepped closer to him. Her paper gown rustled. She looked insignificant, small, and utterly lethal. The truth is that you need me right here, she said. In Chicago, watching the door, because next time it might not be a clumsy drop in an ER. Next time it might be the airport or the subway. And when that happens, you don't want me in Yemen. You want me 5 minutes away. Vance held her gaze. He ran the calculus. A sleeper asset, he mused. In place, unsupervised. Self-supervised, Elena corrected. Vance sighed. He reached into his jacket pocket. He pulled out a plastic badge. It wasn't a CIA badge. It wasn't military. It was her hospital ID. Elena V. Triage Nurse. He had retrieved it from the intake desk. He handed it to her. Clean bill of health, Vance said. The doctors will certify that you are virus-free. You go through the standard debrief. You sign the NDAs, and then you go back to work, Vance said. But keep the phone charged, Wraith. Elena took the badge. She clipped it onto her paper gown. My name is Elena, she said. Sure it is, Vance said. He turned to walk away. Good work tonight, Elena. Elena watched him go. She turned back to the medical ward. Davis and Rogers were sitting on cots, eating energy bars. They looked up as she approached. Hey, Davis said. He stood up. Is he okay, Miller? He's going to make it, Elena said. Davis looked at her. He looked at her wet hair, her tired eyes. You saved him, Davis said. You saved all of us. I don't know how to thank you. You don't have to, Elena said. But the way you talked to them, Rogers said, eyes wide. The way you climbed the vent, that wasn't. I mean, where did you learn that? Elena paused. She looked at the two young agents. She could see the hero worship forming in their eyes, the myth building. Oh, she had to kill it. She slumped her shoulders. She let a tremor enter her hand. She rubbed her eyes, feigning exhaustion and confusion. I grew up on a farm, she lied softly. We had to fix our own tractors, and I watch a lot of medical detectives. She gave a weak, shaky laugh. I was so scared, she whispered. I just wanted to go home. The agent softened. The myth evaporated. She was just a brave, scared woman again. You were amazing, Rogers said. My mom is a nurse. I'm going to tell her about you. Don't, Elena said. Just tell her you're safe. Ma'am. It was the doctor again, the one she had threatened. He was standing there with a clipboard. We need to process your blood work, he said, and then we can discharge you. Discharge, Elena asked. To where? Home, the doctor said. The CDC has cleared the perimeter. St. Jude's is closed for deep cleaning, but you're free to go. Elena nodded. One thing, she said. Yes. Agent Miller, when he wakes up, fully wakes up, tell him I said the shift is over. I'll tell him. The doctor hesitated. You know, he said, lowering his voice, that intubation, the drug dosage, you were right, I was wrong. Doctors practice medicine, Elena said, looking at the glass cube one last time. Nurses practice survival. She walked toward the exit of the hangar. Outside, the sky was fully light now. The storm had passed. The air was cold and clean. Elena stepped out of the clean zone and into the world. She was wearing a gray sweatsuit provided by the Red Cross. She had no car, no keys, No phone except the satellite brick hidden in her pocket. She walked to the edge of the airfield. A taxi was waiting, arranged by Vance, no doubt. She opened the door. "Where to, lady?" the driver asked. Alina sat back against the seat. She closed her eyes. "St. Jude's Hospital," she said. "I left my car in the employee lot." "You work there?" the driver asked, eyeing the military vehicles in the distance. "Heard there was some big gas leak or something last night. Crazy stuff." Alina looked out the window. She saw the smoke rising from the incinerators where they were burning the contaminated gear. "Yeah," she said quietly, "crazy stuff." "Well," the driver said, putting the car in gear, "at least nobody got hurt, right?" Alina touched the badge on her chest. "Right," she said, "nobody got hurt." The taxi drove away, merging into the morning traffic of a city that had no idea how close it had come to dying. And Alina, the invisible nurse, faded back into the stream, just another face in the crowd. The hospital reopened 72 hours later. The official story, disseminated by the mayor's office and corroborated by a vague statement from the Department of Homeland Security, was a catastrophic HVAC failure resulting in a localized chemical combustion. Nobody mentioned the virus. Nobody mentioned the prisoner. Nobody mentioned the woman in the ceiling. It was a Monday night when Alina walked back through the sliding glass doors of St. Jude's emergency room. The rain had returned, a soft, persistent drizzle that washed the city streets clean of the weekend's grime. Alina shook her umbrella in the vestibule, collapsing it with a dull thwack. As she looked at the doors, the steel shutters were gone. The warped metal frame where the Delta team had breached had been cut away and replaced with fresh aluminum. The glass was new, devoid of scratches. Inside, the ER smelled of fresh paint, lemon-scented industrial cleaner, and the lingering, ghostly scent of ozone. The waiting room was half full. A teenager with a broken nose, a mother rocking a feverish toddler, an old man clutching his chest. The normal world. Alina walked to the triage desk. She was wearing her usual navy scrubs. Her hair was pulled back in the same severe bun. Her badge, Alina V. Triage Nurse, was clipped to her pocket. The night clerk, a new hire named Sarah, looked up. "Hey, Alina," Sarah said, popping a piece of gum. "You're back early. I thought you were taking the week." "I get bored at home," Alina said. She put her bag in the drawer. She picked up the clipboard. "What's the board look like?" "Quiet night," Sarah said. "Dr. Holloway is on. He's been weird since the gas leak." Alina looked toward the nurse's station. Dr. Holloway was there. He was sitting at the computer, staring at a blank screen. He wasn't clicking the mouse. He was just staring. He looked older. The boyish arrogance of the second-year resident was gone, replaced by a hollowed-out stillness around the eyes. He had seen the dragon, and he knew he wasn't the knight. Alina walked over to him. "Doctor," she said softly. Holloway flinched. He spun the chair around. When he saw it was Alina, his shoulders dropped. "Alina," he breathed, "you came back." "It's my shift," she said. Holloway looked around to make sure no one was listening. He leaned in close. "I signed the NDAs," he whispered. "The suits, they came to my apartment. They made me sign 3 inches of paperwork, Section 8, National Security Act." "Standard procedure," Alina said, checking the crash cart supplies. "They told me it didn't happen," Holloway said, his voice trembling slightly. "They told me Agent Keller died of a heart attack. They told me the prisoner was a transfer error who died of complications from pneumonia. He looked at Alina's hands, the hands that had mixed a chemical weapon antidote in a blackout. "But I know," Holloway said. "I saw what you did." Alina stopped checking the saline bags. She turned to him. "What did you see, doctor?" I saw you save us. I saw you command a kill team." Alina's face remained impassive. She reached out and straightened Holloway's collar. It was a maternal gesture, but the weight behind it was iron. "You saw a nurse following emergency protocols during a crisis," Alina said. "You saw adrenaline and luck, that's all." "That's not—" "Doctor," Alina cut him off. Her voice dropped to that dangerous, subsonic register she had used in the tent. "To be a good doctor, you need to be able to compartmentalize. You put the trauma in a box, you lock the box, and you treat the patient in front of you." Well, she tapped his chest. "Lock the box." Holloway stared at her. He swallowed hard. He nodded. "Box locked," he whispered. "Good," Alina said. "Now Bay 3 needs a suture kit, a laceration. Go practice your stitching." Holloway stood up. He looked at her one last time with a mixture of fear and awe, then walked toward Bay 3. He walked straighter than he had last week. He had survived the fire, and he had been forged by it. Alina watched him go. She went back to the desk. "Alina." It was the hospital administrator, Mr. Henderson, a man whose biggest crisis usually involved budget overruns and parking permit disputes. "Mr. Henderson," Alina said, Can I speak with you in my office for a moment?" Alina followed him. His office was plush, quiet, and insulated from the noise of the ER. He sat behind his mahogany desk and gestured for her to sit. "I wanted to thank you," Henderson said. "The federal agents, the ones managing the cleanup, they mentioned you." Alina felt a spike of tension. "Did they?" "Yes," Henderson beamed. "They said you were instrumental in keeping the staff calm during the lockdown. They said you managed the supply inventory very efficiently." Alina relaxed. Supply inventory, that was Vance's cover story. "I did what I could," Alina said. "We want to recognize that," Henderson said. He reached into his drawer and pulled out a small velvet box and a certificate. "The board voted to give you the Employee of the Month award," Henderson said proudly, "and a $50 gift card to the cafeteria." Alina looked at the certificate. It was printed on cheap cardstock for excellence in crisis management. She looked at the pin in the box. It was a generic gold star. She wanted to laugh. She had negotiated with Delta Force. She had climbed a ventilation shaft with a dying oxygen supply. She had held the fate of Chicago in a notebook. And she got a $50 gift card. It was perfect. "Thank you, sir," Alina said. She took the box. "I appreciate it." "You're a credit to the hospital, Alina," Henderson said. "We're lucky to have a nurse like you, reliable, quiet." "I try to be," Alina said. She stood up. "I should get back. The waiting room is filling up." Of course, duty calls." Alina walked out of the office. She pinned the gold star to the inside of her pocket where no one would see it. She returned to the floor. The rhythm of the night took over. 22:00, a drunk driver with a forehead laceration. Alina cleaned the wound, ignoring his slurred insults. 23:30, an asthma attack. Alina set up the nebulizer, her hands moving with the muscle memory that never failed. 01:00, quiet. The rain had stopped. The ER was silent, save for the hum of the vending machine and the scratching of Sarah's pen. The automatic doors hissed open. Alina didn't look up immediately. "Sign in on the tablet, please. Take a seat." "I think I'm past the sign-in sheet." The voice was rough, gravelly, familiar. Alina froze. Her hand hovered over the stapler. As she looked up, Agent Miller stood there. He wasn't wearing a suit. He was wearing jeans and a thick gray hoodie. He looked thinner, gaunt, even. His skin was pale, and there were dark circles under his eyes that spoke of nightmares and dialysis machines. He was leaning heavily on a cane. But he was standing. Alina stood up slowly. "Agent Miller," she said. "Just Miller," he said. "They took my badge, medical leave. Indefinite suspension pending physical therapy." He limped toward the desk. Sarah, the clerk, looked at him suspiciously. "Do you know him, Alina?" Sarah asked. "It's okay, Sarah," Alina said. "Go take your break, I'll watch the desk." Sarah shrugged, grabbed her phone, and headed for the break room. Alina and Miller were alone in the vestibule. "You're alive," Alina said. "Barely," Miller said. He touched his chest. "My kidneys are functioning at 60%. My lungs feel like I smoked a pack a day for 20 years, but yeah, alive." "You shouldn't be here," Alina said. "You should be resting." "I had to see it," Miller said. He looked around the ER. He looked at the spot on the floor where he had almost died, now covered by a pristine wax finish. "It looks like nothing happened." "That's the point," Alina said. Miller turned his gaze to her. His eyes were intense, searching. "I asked about you," Miller said. "At Walter Reed, I asked General Vance." "And what did he say?" "He said you didn't exist," Miller said. "He said the nurse who treated me was a civilian contractor who was debriefed and released. He said if I kept asking questions, my pension would disappear." Alina nodded. "Vance is protective." Miller laughed a dry wheeze. "Protective, right." He reached into his hoodie pocket. "I found this," he said. "In my jacket. The medics missed it when they stripped me." He pulled out a small, silver object. It was a scalpel blade, the one Alina had used to cut the tape in the tent. He placed it on the counter between them. "I know what I saw, Alina," Miller said. "I know you're not just a nurse. I saw how you talked to the Delta leader. I saw the code you used on the phone." Alina picked up the scalpel blade. She turned it over in her fingers. It caught the fluorescent light. "You were hallucinating," Alina said softly. "The virus affects the temporal lobe. It causes vivid delusions." "Don't," Miller said. "Don't gaslight me, not after you saved my life." Alina sighed. She put the blade down. She leaned over the counter. "Miller," she said, "what do you want?" "I want to know why," Miller said. "If you have that kind of skill, that kind of power, why are you here? Why are you wiping up vomit and taking abuse from drunk college kids in the middle of the night?" Alina looked past him, out the glass doors into the dark street. "Because the world is loud," Alina said. "And it's violent, and I spent 20 years adding to that noise." She looked back at him. "Here," she gestured to the quiet ER. "I stop the noise, I fix the broken things, and when I go home, I sleep." Miller studied her face. He saw the lines around her eyes, the gray in her hair. He saw the fatigue, but he also saw the peace. "You're hiding," Miller said. "I'm resting," Alina corrected. Miller nodded slowly. He understood. He was a soldier, too, broken in a different way. He understood the need for silence. "Well," Miller said. He picked up the scalpel blade and dropped it into the sharps container on the desk. Clink. "Your secret is safe with me," Miller said. "Wraith." Elena didn't flinch at the call sign. She just offered a small, sad smile. "Goodbye, Millers. Goodbye, Elena's." He turned and limped toward the door. The cane clicked rhythmically on the linoleum. At the door, he stopped. He didn't look back. "If it ever happens again," he said to the glass. "If the world gets loud again." "It won't," Elena said. "But if it does," Miller said, "I'm glad you're watching the door." The doors hissed open. He walked out into the night. Elena watched him until he disappeared into the shadows of the parking lot. She let out a long breath. The loose end was tied. The chapter was closed. The red phone on the desk didn't ring. The radio was silent. She sat down. She pulled a patient file from the stack. Patient, 45-year-old male. Complaint, migraine. Standard routine, beautifully boring. She picked up her pen. Then the ambulance bay radio crackled. "St. Jude's, this is dispatch. We have a multi-vehicle collision on I-90. Possible chemical spill from a tanker. 3 traumas inbound. ETA 4 minutes." Sarah ran back from the break room, wiping crumbs from her mouth. "Chemical spill?" Sarah asked, eyes wide. "Elena, did you hear that? Should we call the director?" Elena stood up. She didn't panic. She didn't call the director. She didn't reach for the satellite phone in her locker. She reached for a pair of fresh nitrile gloves. She snapped them on. The sound was crisp, sharp. She walked to the trauma bay doors. She checked the crash cart. She checked the oxygen flow. She checked the lock on the door just in case. She stood in the center of the room, waiting for the chaos to arrive. Her posture shifted. Her shoulders went back. Her chin lifted slightly. The fatigue vanished, replaced by a dormant, terrifying competence. For a second, just a split second, the shadow of the operative flickered across her face, the wolf showing its teeth. Then she blinked. Her expression softened. Her shoulders rounded slightly. She clasped her hands in front of her scrubs. She was ready. Not as a soldier, not as a spy. "Ready for intake," Elena said to the empty room. She was just the nurse. And that was enough. Fade to black. End of transcript.